Chapter 824. Wait and see. The woman among the three Deshang stage elders next to him stopped Bian Shiren's restlessness. He'll be fine. What do you mean? Bian Shiren was shocked. You when he was promoted to the Deshang stage, and Yang Chun would be fine. What does this mean? Yang Chun was a junior in the middle Jidan stage. There was no doubt about this. Bian Shiren had seen it with his own eyes, and it should not be false. A middle Jidan stage master against a Deshang stage master. It was impossible to survive. The elder said that Yang Chun would be fine, which could only explain one possibility. There was a master of the Deshang stage beside Yang Chun. Thinking of Yu Winnie's fire tribulation, and Yang Chun and others were watching it so closely, Bian Shiren immediately became more sure that there must be a master of the Deshang stage who was there to protect him. This time, Bian Shiren and Shu Lanqiu were taken aback. It was incredible that there was a master of the Deshang stage in a small Wanbao tower. Of course, the most incredible thing was that Yang Chun actually became the owner of the Wanbao tower with a middle Jidan stage cultivation base. It was really true that people could not be judged by their appearance. At this moment, there were already countless masters in the South China Sea area. There was a master of fire tribulation, and naturally everyone wanted to watch the ceremony in order to increase their experience. Fortunately, the South China Sea Alliance had already blocked the sea area first. Those who wanted to rush and were all stopped by the South China Sea Alliance. Here, the South China Sea Alliance was the boss. Since the people of the South China Sea Alliance did not let everyone in, then no one dared to go in. Those who thought that they had a face could only come to Bian Shiren first and try to see if they could persuade the Alliance Master to let them in to watch the ceremony. The idea was good, but when they came over, they found that even the Alliance Master and his wife were waiting far away and did not go in. Looking again, there were three Deshang stage elders of the South China Sea Alliance next to them. For a while, no one dared to speak again. Who had a big face? Could it be bigger than these three elders of the South China Sea Alliance? The fire tribulation has been passed 7 times in a row, and Yu Winnie's performance has already looked very bad. After all, using demonic methods to forcefully raise one's cultivation realm was not that stable. Now Yu Winnie's greatest hope was that Yang Chun and others would take advantage of his tribulation to attack him. In this way, the power of the fire tribulation would also be borne by the person who was attacked. In this way, he might be able to take advantage of the chaos to get through it safely. Yang Chun also saw Yu Winnie's reluctance, and suddenly a whim came to his mind. The old tree demon was able to suppress the fire tribulation for more than a dozen times. Maybe there was a way to guide and disperse the power of the fire tribulation. If this was the case, it could give some benefits to the Yuanying stage masters who came out with him. Old Gui, can you bring down a part of his fire tribulation and let them feel it? Yang Chun also suddenly thought of it and immediately asked the old tree demon for confirmation. Maybe. Old tree demon thought for a moment and immediately gave the answer. After suppressing the fire tribulation for more than a dozen times in a row, no one in the world knew more about the fire tribulation than the old tree demon. Even if Yang Chun had the memory of the great principal golden immortal, he was not his opponent. In a flash, Yu Winnie's 8th fire tribulation had begun to burn, and his face also showed a look of horror. This time, Yu Winnie would not be able to take it. Just when Yu Winnie thought he was going to disappear, a branch that he didn't know where to stick out directly poke his body. This time, the fire tribulation that raged in Yu Winnie's body seemed to have suddenly found an outlet to vent. At least half of the fire tribulation immediately flew out along this branch. Yu Winnie's pressure was reduced a lot. Under the great joy, Yu Winnie immediately forced his spirit and suppressed the 8th fire tribulation. In the shield of the old tree demon, Shi Kuei, Xie Sha, and other 10 Yuanying stage masters, each flashed a small fire. Compared with the fire tribulation, the power of this little fire was simply small and pitiful. Even with their Yuanying stage cultivation base, they could completely suppress it. The small group of fire that each person bore was proportional to each person's cultivation base. Just now, what Yang Chun and the old tree demon said Everyone listened to it, and they all understood how enviable the opportunity was in front of them. No one said anything. They raised their cultivation base to the extreme and began to feel the power of this fire. To be able to taste the fire tribulation before crossing the fire tribulation, this was an opportunity that many people dreamed of but couldn't ask for, and now it had come to them. As long as they had the experience of fighting against the fire tribulation, then when they really crossed the tribulation in the future, there would be more ways to deal with the other party. After all, these fires were originally the same as the fire tribulation, but the power was different. It could be said that this time, the 10 Yuanying stage masters who came out with Yangchun were simply lucky. How difficult it was for a master to cross the fire tribulation, everyone understood. And when they were crossing the tribulation, who would allow others to interfere? Even if others wanted to interfere, without the old tree demon who had a thorough understanding of the fire tribulation, who could easily take it, there was only one consequence of rashly interfering. That was, the person who crossed the tribulation directly failed, and the person who interfered would also be entangled by the fire tribulation. Even if it was the intervention of a master of the Deshang stage, without the level of the old tree demon, it was impossible. At most, they could ensure that they were safe, but the master who crossed the tribulation would definitely die. When idle people crossed the fire tribulation, they would definitely be on guard. How could it be like now? They didn't have to worry about whether the other party could bear it. As long as they took care of their own people, they could be so relaxed. When everyone tried their best to suppress this fire, the 9th fire tribulation began to descend at the same time. Yuan didn't know what happened. He only knew one thing. That was, when he was most desperate, it seemed that someone on Yang Chen's side was very stupid to share his suffering, so that he could survive the 8th fire tribulation. Even in madness, Yuan still hoped that the 9th fire tribulation could also be shared by someone. As long as he passed the fire tribulation, he would be a master of the Deshang stage. These guys in front of him would all die, and they would die in great pain. In Yuan's devout prayer, the 9th fire tribulation came, and at the same time, the life-saving branch appeared again. This time, the power of the fire tribulation was directly shared by a large part, and the remaining bit was enough for Yuan to rely on his current cultivation base to survive. The 9th fire tribulation passed smoothly, and the tribulation clouds in the sky began to disperse rapidly, revealing a clear sky. Yuan in midair was like a different person, staring coldly at Yangchun and his party, as if staring at a group of dead people. Chapter 825. Yuan's feeling has never been so good. Even if the arrangement of the hidden dragon cave for hundreds of years has been burned, even if strictly speaking, he was the only one left in the hidden dragon cave. But so what? Yuan himself has passed the fire tribulation and became a master of the Deshang stage. All the sacrifices were worth it. Even if the Taishaman knew about it, they would only win over Yuan and would not blame him. What does a master of the Deshang stage mean? Now Yuan knows better than ever. The kind of power that his whole body is full of, the feeling of the improvement of his momentum, the kind of artistic conception that can almost be said to be the law, made him completely addicted to it. This feeling was so wonderful that even Yuan looked at Yangchun and others and was not in a hurry to start. He hoped to see their fear and despair from the eyes of Yangchun and others. Let the enemy completely lose all confidence. That was the real way to crush the enemy. That was the real enjoyment. In Yuan's mind, even a beautiful picture has been outlined. Fear and despair occupied all the emotions of Yangchun and others. In their eyes, as if they were pilgrims, everyone collectively knelt down to him and begged for mercy. After they begged hard, they were mercilessly obliterated by him. He has achieved the Deshang stage. What about the South China Sea Alliance? Even if there's only one person left in the Hidden Dragon Cave, it would be easy to restore the past. Even the future Hidden Dragon Cave would be stronger than before. The plan for the South China Sea Alliance could even be advanced. Although this time he didn't know what benefits these guys in Wanbao Tower gave to the South China Sea Alliance. As long as he took the heads of these people to see Bien Shiren, he was not afraid that the Bien Shiren would not explain and compensate for this incident. Among the Taishamen, his own status could also skyrocket. It was really a waste of talent to use a master of the Deshang stage to plot against a rogue cultivator alliance. After returning to Taishamen, he could also be as powerful as those elders of the Deshang stage and have infinite glory. Thinking of the pride, Yuweni couldn't help laughing. He did not deliberately suppress his laughter. Instead, he deliberately let the sound spread out. Within a radius of hundreds of miles, everyone heard Yuweni's proud laughter. Hence, the last thing you should have done was to attack me during my tribulation. This is the worst mistake you've ever made in your entire lives. Yuweni laughed crazily at the group of people under the protection of the old tree demon. And the last mistake. Oh no! Bien Shiren, who was watching the battle from 100 miles away, couldn't help but sigh. Such a good opportunity. Even let Yuweni cross the tribulation to reach the Deshang stage. It seemed that the heaven did not kill Yuweni. Even if there was a master of the Deshang stage on Yangchen's side, but they were also in the Deshang stage. Once Yuweni found that he was not a match and wanted to escape, Yangchen would never be able to catch up. Although there were 3 masters of the Deshang stage on his side, it was impossible to stop Yuweni, who was determined to escape. Yuweni left today, and the South China Sea Alliance will have endless troubles in the future. You must know that he was a master of the Deshang stage. Once he put down his arrogance and began to use harassment tactics, even the South China Sea Alliance would be helpless. It was impossible to let the 3 elders of the Deshang stage keep an eye on Yuweni all the time, right? One mistake, and the whole game would be lost. Even if there was a master of the Deshang stage around Yangchen, if Yuweni was determined to kill Yangchen, it was impossible for the master to guard him all the time. Even if Yuweni was allowed to complete the tribulation without interference, Yangchen's move was definitely wrong. At that time, it should be a quick and decisive move. Let the master of the Deshang stage attack, completely kill Yuweni, and end it. Why would it be in this embarrassing situation now? Quick, go and surround Yuweni. Bien Shiren could only mend the pen after the sheep was lost, and ordered the 3 Deshang stage elders of the South China Sea Alliance. Today, we must not let him escape. The 3 masters also realized the seriousness of the problem, and no one said anything. They quickly flew in 3 directions. Not asking for anything else, just asking Yangchen's people to hold on there for a while, allowing them to shrink the encirclement. Yuweni's loud laughter continued. The ha-ha-ha sound resounded through the air. Staring at the figures of Yangchen and others, his face was full of a sarcastic smile. Have you ever seen such a stupid guy? In Yuweni's wild laughter, Yangchen suddenly turned his head and asked Gong Sunling beside him. No! Gong Sunling shook her head very cooperatively, looking at Yuweni with the same sarcastic eyes, and even with a trace of pity on her face. Poor guy, he must be too happy and crazy. As soon as Gong Sunling's voice fell, the 10 masters of the Yuanying stage, including Shi Kuei and Xie Sha, nodded at the same time as if they were sad. With their equally pitiful eyes, the scene made people speechless. Alas, great joy and great sorrow are the taboo of the cultivators. We have to learn a lesson in the future. The old tree demon behind him also did not fall behind, and said with sincerity. The old and prudent words suddenly caused a resonance among the people, and there was a burst of nodding. Yuweni was almost angered by the performance of Yangchen and others. At the moment, he no longer cared about the scene of begging for mercy, and shouted at Yangchen and others, "Ants, give me your life." Just shouting, Yangchen raised his hand and pointed behind Yuweni. Then, Yuweni heard a whistle behind him, and then Ho Yun's voice fell into his ears. "Hey, you're not an ant. Your opponent is me. I've been waiting for you for a long time." Ho Yun did wait for Yuweni for a long time. For Ho Yun, the enemy of the Yuanying stage was not satisfying at all. He waited until Yuweni reached the Deshang stage before he planned to start. He didn't expect Yuweni to talk so much nonsense. He didn't notice his existence for a long time. "I'll kill you first." Yuweni was furious. He screamed and rushed towards Ho Yun. The flying sword also appeared above his head with his figure. waiting for a sword to pierce the heart and completely solve Ho Yun. Ho Yun's eyes lit up, and the big stick in his hand was swung with all his strength. With a whistling wind, it appeared on the top of Yu Winnie's head in an instant. Yu Winnie's flying sword made a thunderous sound, and Yu Winnie's flying sword was directly smashed into pieces by Ho Yun's stick. The remaining power of the big stick that fell high has not disappeared, and it fell straight on Yu Winnie's head. Bang! The head of Yu Winnie, a new master of the Deshang stage, was like a ripe watermelon that was hit. The whole thing burst open, and the blood splashed. Ho Yun took Yu Winnie's little life with just one move. Yu Winnie's body of the Deshang stage fell directly into the spreading blood demon vine underground and became the best flower fertilizer. The people of the South China Sea Alliance who were paying attention to this side, at this moment, all looked like they had seen a ghost. They were stunned and could no longer say anything. Chapter 826. The tall guy, who looked abnormally strong, actually smashed Yu Winnie's head and flying sword into a rotten watermelon? Was the scene that was just explored by spiritual awareness a dream? No matter how unbearable Yu Winnie was, he was also a master of the Deshang stage who was promoted under the eyes of everyone. How could he not stop the big guy? How high was the cultivation base of that big guy? When Ho Yun was in the Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's cave, he was a master of hiding his aura. If it wasn't for the fact that it was impossible to have a master lower than the Deshang stage in the Deshang stage area, even if the old tree demon went in, he would not see that Ho Yun was a master of the Deshang stage at first glance. Even in the process of fighting with the septuplets of the Hidden Dragon Cave, except for the people in Chunyang Palace, including the South China Sea Alliance in the Hidden Dragon Cave, everyone thought that Ho Yun was just a master of the peak Yuanying stage at first. Even up to now, Ho Yun has not released the aura of the Deshang stage. Others still thought that Ho Yun was just a peak Yuanying stage master. In this world, there were many geniuses, and the things of beating opponents were like the stars in the sky. They were countless. However, a person in the peak foundation stage defeating the early Jiedan stage, or a person in the peak Jiedan stage defeating the early Yuanying stage, that was still something that everyone could imagine. The problem was that Ho Yun was now at the peak Yuanying stage and defeated the early Deshang stage. The gap between each realm, no one was clearer than these masters of the Deshang stage and the Yuanying stage. Originally, they thought that Yu Winnie might escape and become a big problem for everyone, but they didn't expect the shock to come so suddenly. They didn't even let everyone appreciate the process of a well-matched battle, and it was finished with a stick. The people of Wanbao Tower, whether it was because they needed to refine the antidote or not, they couldn't provoke them casually now. These people were really too fierce. In the Hidden Dragon Cave, in less than 3 hours, 15 Yuanying stage masters were killed. Even Yu Winnie, who was promoted to the Deshang stage, was no exception, and there were only 11 people on this side. The strength of these people was unparalleled. This was still the scene where everyone didn't know that the old tree demon increased the experience of the Een Fire Tribulation for everyone. Otherwise, their jaws would definitely drop. Not to mention everyone's astonishment. The people of Chunyang Palace were not surprised at all. This was a matter of course. If Ho Yun couldn't even deal with a guy who could pass the Een Fire Tribulation by cheating, then his combat power was really too bad. Yu Winnie's body became the fertilizer for the Blood Demon Vine and the Blood Demon Vine Sword. The Blood Demon Vine Flying Sword once again absorbed the blood of a Deshang stage master, and the quality seemed to be a little better. The Blood Phantom Vine was nourished by the Deshang stage master's flesh and blood, and its vitality was restored a lot. From the moment Yu Winnie was smashed into a rotten watermelon with a stick, Yang Chen's dealing with the Hidden Dragon Cave was completely drawn to an end. The high-level members of the Hidden Dragon Cave were all killed. Even if there were fish that escaped the net, they were just small fish and shrimp. They were not qualified enough for the Taishaman to win over. This was a gathering place for rogue cultivators. Soon, these small fries and shrimps would become the disciples of other rogue cultivator alliances. From this moment on, the Hidden Dragon Cave was removed from the South China Sea. He believed that after the news of the destruction of the Hidden Dragon Cave spread, there were two things that everyone would keep in mind. One was that in the future, someone would set up a rogue cultivator alliance, and it would never be called the Hidden Dragon Cave. Another thing was that when they encountered the Wanbao Tower in the future, it would be best to behave well and never think about stealing or even murder for money. That was not to kill other people's lives for money, and in the end, it was definitely themselves who lost both money and money. The next time was the time to harvest the spoils of war. The disciples who were killed in the Hidden Dragon Cave, all their chinquin bags should be turned over as much as possible and collected together. In addition, the Hidden Dragon Cave has been entrenched on these islands for hundreds of years, and there will definitely be warehouses for storing resources. Now all these things belong to the Wanbao Tower. At least in the eyes of outsiders, the people of the Hidden Dragon Cave destroyed the Wanbao Tower's branch and plundered all the property. Now the people of the Wanbao Tower came to destroy the Hidden Dragon Cave, and they definitely did the same thing. There were people from the South China Sea Alliance blocking the periphery, and no one could come in and pick up the ready-made benefits. Even if the South China Sea Alliance's blockade was weak, no one dared to rush in casually. The fate of the newly promoted Deshang Stage Master Yu Wenyi was in front of them. If anyone was impatient to live, they could try it. It wasn't until Yang Chun and others cleaned up and all the spoils of war were plundered that the Bian Shiren couple came to Yang Chen's side together. The three Deshang Stage Masters and other people who blocked the Hidden Dragon Cave did not come close, for fear of causing a misunderstanding with Yang Chun and others. At this moment, there was no need to complicate matters. Congratulations to Mr. Yang for getting revenge and getting justice for your branch's shopkeeper and staff. Of course, they had to congratulate him. Bian Shiren and Shu Lanqiu came with this purpose. Thank you for the support of the Alliance Master. Yang Chun responded with a smile, and then immediately said the question that the Bian Shiren couple were most concerned about. Thanks to the blessings of the two of you, I have just found the right medicinal materials in the chinquin bag of those people in the Hidden Dragon Cave. Wait a few days, I will immediately refine the antidote for your son and everyone. Hearing Yang Chen's words, the Bian Shiren couple's hearts finally fell back into their stomachs. They were afraid that Yang Chen would say that there were no suitable medicinal materials found here, and they could only solve the problem by returning to the Central Plains Dao sects. Although the poisoning was not deep now. After all the high-level people were poisoned. Who knows if these slight poisons would have any hidden dangers, or the antidote would make people feel a lot more relieved. Once Yang Chun said that he was going to return to the Central Plains, who knows how things would develop in the future. Now this result was just right. Alliance Master Bien, I don't know if the South China Sea Alliance is interested in these islands. Yang Chun looked at the islands of the Hidden Dragon Cave, where there were no more living people, thought for a moment, and began to ask Bian Shiren's opinion. If the Alliance Master is interested, this junior is willing to sell at a suitable price. Yang Chen's words made the Bian Shiren couple's eyes light up again. Although the islands occupied by the Hidden Dragon Cave were not the best islands, this main island was very rich in spiritual power, and the Hidden Dragon Cave had been operating for hundreds of years. It was simply a ready-made place for cultivation, and it was also a ready-made alliance location. In the past, the Hidden Dragon Cave was occupied, and even if the South China Sea Alliance wanted these islands, they couldn't get it. After all, everyone had not yet reached the point of falling out. Now these islands were ownerless. If Yang Chun and the others took them down, they would belong to Yang Chun and the others. Since Yang Chun was willing to transfer, they could get it at the price of some spirit stone resources, which was too cost-effective. Chapter 827. Interested, Bian Shiren hurriedly said, Mr. Yang, please offer a price my South China Sea Alliance will not bargain. Yang Chun detoxified them, which was a life-saving grace, plus a complete cultivation place. As long as it was not a request that would hurt the South China Sea Alliance, Bian Shiren would never refuse. If that's the case, then this junior will not be polite. Yang Chun also knew that if he didn't let Bian Shiren bleed a little, Bian Shiren himself would feel sorry and may even doubt the authenticity of the antidote Yang Chun gave them, and then have more doubts about Yang Chen's purpose. This sight Alliance Master Bien can use some of the South China Sea's specialties to exchange, Yang Chun said with a smile. The island was useless to take it down by himself, so it could be used to exchange for some specialties from the South China Sea. But after thinking about it, he added, if there are some special fire seeds and miscellaneous books here, this junior will also accept it. Just as the things of the Central Plains Dao Sex are valuable, the things produced in the deep sea of the South China Sea are also a good deal for the Central Plains Dao Sex, and Wanbao Tower can also make a lot of money. Hearing that the specialty of the South China Sea could be exchanged for the industry of the Hidden Dragon Cave, Bien Shiren had no reason to disagree. As for the quantity, there is no need for Yang Chun to mention more. As long as the South China Sea Alliance can find it, it will definitely trade fairly and will never let Wanbao Tower suffer a loss. The end of the Hidden Dragon Cave was right in front of them, and no one will want to find trouble with it. As for the fire seeds, it was even less of a problem. Here, above the vast sea, most people were of the water attribute. Some high-level and low-level fire seeds were almost in a state of no interest. Yang Chun even accepted these, even according to the market here. The fire seeds could be sold at a good price. Maybe in the future, Wanbao Tower can establish a long-term cooperation with your alliance. After the deal was settled, Yang Chun and the Alliance Master Bien talked about another thing. Wanbao Tower will use the production of the Central Plains Dao Sex in exchange for the specialty of your alliance in the South China Sea. This was a long-term collaboration. Wanbao Tower's branch had suffered a loss this time. It was located far away from the South China Sea. It would be difficult to ensure the safety of the branch if it was established there. The South China Sea could not be compared to the Central Plains Taoist sect, but by exchanging the products of the Central Plain for the specialties of the South China Sea without establishing a branch, he could still earn huge profits. At the same time, he would have an additional partner. To Yang Chun, it was killing two birds with one stone. In this way, Wanbao Tower earns high profits from the South China Sea specialties in the Central Plains, and the South China Sea Alliance earns high profits from the Central Plains output in the South China Sea. Everyone gets rich together, and this cooperative relationship will last longer. The two sides hit it off on this matter. The South China Sea Alliance has no channels in the Central Plains, but it has a large number of South China Sea specialty resources. The Wanbao Tower was in a similar situation. Both parties exchanged their towers, but it saved them the risk of long-distance operations. At most, it only increased the risk of transportation. Both parties were very satisfied with this. The only one who was dissatisfied was Ho Yun. He had followed Yang Chun out to kill, but in the end he had only killed one. Although the most powerful master of the Deshang stage was killed, Ho Yun was very unsatisfied. When Yang Chun helped the South China Sea Alliance refine medicinal pills, the South China Sea Alliance was raising enough resources to pay for the purchase of the Hidden Dragon Cave industry. The largest rogue cultivator alliance in the South China Sea wanted to annex the foundation of the Hidden Dragon Cave, and no one dared to say anything. In addition, the people in the Hidden Dragon Cave that other people found were uprooted by a group of unknown masters in one fell swoop. Even the cave master Yuweni, who was promoted to the Deshang stage, was no exception. Those who knew were naturally silent. In only 4 or 5 days, Yang Chun had completed the refining of the antidote. In the words of Gong Sun Ling, a 5th-grade alchemist, refining this simple antidote was really a bit of a waste. If Bien Shiren knew the identity of Yang Chun in the future, he would definitely feel honored, and it was also estimated that he would feel abnormal regret. Yang Chun personally refined medicinal pills for outsiders, which was a good thing that even Taishaman couldn't ask for now, but the South China Sea Alliance encountered it. But the 5th-grade alchemist master actually only refined this simple antidote, which was simply a waste of natural resources. If it was known by the people of the Central Plains Dao Sex, they would definitely beat their chests and stamp their feet. The opportunity that Yang Chun was willing to help was wasted on this, and the South China Sea Alliance would definitely regret what they had missed. However, Yang Chun and others waited here for a full month. Within a month, the South China Sea Alliance almost emptied the market and the South China Sea Alliance's own inventory, and all the masters came out to search and collect in the surrounding sea area. Finally, They collected what they thought was enough, and then they came to trade with Yangchun. It was originally a free site. Even without these things, Yangchun would give it up. Now that there were so many benefits for no reason, Yangchun was naturally happy. After the transaction was completed, the senior executives of the South China Sea Alliance and Bianyong each took the antidote made by Yangchun. 2 days later, the disease was eliminated, the whole body was relaxed, and there was no more worry. Both sides were also happy, and at the same time, they opened the prelude to long-term cooperation in the future. The harvest of the previous killing in the Hidden Dragon Cave has been divided up by Yangchun and everyone. At this point, Yangchun has never treated his own people badly. Even the harvest this time, Yangchun's intention was to distribute all of it to everyone. However, everyone did not accept it. They just selected a batch of things that they were interested in, and all the rest were handed over to Yangchun. Several kinds of fire seeds unique to the deep sea were collected from submarine volcanoes and other places. Many of them were 3rd grade and 4th grade fire seeds, which Yangchun couldn't get in the Central Plains, and now they were also in his pocket. There were almost tens of thousands of volumes of miscellaneous books, which made the people of the South China Sea Alliance very strange. They didn't know what Yangchun wanted these useless things that could only be used for entertainment. Yangchun didn't explain, but just accepted it himself. Knowing that Yangchun liked alchemy, the South China Sea Alliance even generously gave Yangchun a copy of the alchemy materials of the Roe Cultivator Alliance, so that Yangchun could learn more systematically. Yangchun also carefully studied these deep-sea specialties, especially some of the medicinal materials. In terms of using deep-sea medicinal materials, the Roe Cultivator Alliance, which has been in the South China Sea, is obviously more adequate than the Central Plains Dao Sex, which also gives Yangchun a lot of learning opportunities. Among these massive medicinal materials obtained, one of them caught Yangchun's attention. To be exact, it was Xiao Tian's attention. This reddish-brown herb is not very conspicuous among the dry medicinal materials. It has a very interesting name called dragon tongue orchid, named after the shape of a creature's tongue. However, Xiao Tian clearly felt a very weak dragon chi from this medicinal material called dragon tongue orchid. Chapter 828. Yangchun only found the dragon chi in the treasure house of the Dragon Palace. Now Xiao Tian has found that there is an extremely weak dragon chi in this dragon orchid. What does this mean? There is only one explanation. The place where this dragon orchid grows, there is something that releases the dragon chi, which will cause the dragon orchid to absorb some weak dragon chi. If Yangchun doesn't go to see this kind of thing, he would not be Yangchun. Even if not for himself, for the sake of Xiao Tian, Yangchun had to go in person. However, the large group of people and horses could not be taken with him now. First, the Hidden Dragon Cave has been eliminated, and there is basically no place for them to use force. Second, Shi Kuei and Xie Sha have just received 2 baptisms of Yin fire, and they need to retreat to digest it. It is unreasonable to pull them to work hard and disturb people's cultivation. The old tree demon will go to the 100,000 mountains in a few years, and now it is time to go back. Only Ho Yun, who is free and has not had enough fun, is left to follow. As for Gong Sunling, she must follow Yangchun. This is beyond doubt. A good distribution plan. The old tree demon rushed back to Chunyang Palace with everyone. Gong Sunling directly lent the ship to the old tree demon. The 10 Yuanying stage masters could retreat directly on the ship. With the old tree demon in charge, she believed that no one could disturb them. The things in the Hidden Dragon Cave were taken back by the old tree demon, and when they were handed over to Shanghai Feng, they could definitely make a lot of money. The cooperation between the two sides also required the old tree demon to tell the news to Shanghai Feng. Yangchun and Gong Sunling were looking for Bian Shiren to ask where the dragon orchid was planted, so that they could find it and find clues. According to Bian Shiren, there are not many medicinal materials like dragon orchid, and the place to pick them was very far away, but it was dangerous. Compared to the value of dragon orchid, it was not worth picking it. The only ones were brought back by some masters when they went there to work. This is reasonable. At least Yangchun thinks it is reasonable. Where there is dragon chi, It is impossible to be very close to the archipelago of the South China Sea Alliance. Otherwise, someone would have discovered the secret of Dragon Chi. However, to Yang Chen's surprise, the place where the tequila grows turns out to be in a place where everyone in the South China Sea Alliance changes their faces. That sea was called the Sea of No Return. Within the Sea of No Return, not only are there countless fierce monster beasts, but there is also a powerful current. If ordinary cultivators enter, before the monster beasts can make a move, they will be swept and torn apart by the powerful current. So far, the information people know about the Sea of No Return is limited to the periphery of the Sea of No Return. As for what is inside, no one knows. In other words, no living person knows that no one who has gone deep into the Sea of No Return has ever come back alive. In his previous life, Yang Chen also knew about this dangerous place, but he had never been there. Now that Bian Shiren told him about this, Yang Chen was hesitant about whether he should take Gong Sunling to take the risk. Just hearing the name of the Sea of No Return, Ho Yun seemed very excited. In the Blue Vault Mount Immortal's cave, he has been improving his realm step by step all the way, but he has not experienced many battles. He originally hoped that this time he could let Ho Yun fight a few battles, but he only killed Yu Winnie, who had just been promoted to the Deshang stage, and he was still promoted to the Deshang stage by the Old Tree Demon's cheating method, which made him very unhappy. When he heard that there were countless powerful monsters in the Sea of No Return, Ho Yun's eyes immediately shone. On one side was the Dragon Chi discovered by Xiao Tian. On the other side was Ho Yun's desire to fight. Yang Chen considered it and finally decided to go. However, Yang Chen has already calculated that Ho Yun and Gong Sunling would go to the periphery of the Sea of No Return to find fierce sea beasts to fight. On the one hand, it would make Ho Yun happy. On the other hand, it would allow Gong Sunling to capture more masters to fill in the Mountain River geographical map. So far, this time out of the South China Sea, there have been 10 more Yuanying stage masters in Gong Sunling's Mountain River geographical map, all of which were captured by Ho Yun, and the two cooperated very well. He didn't know why, but Ho Yun was very congenial to Gong Sunling, and it seemed that he was trying his best to meet Gong Sunling's requirements. Perhaps this had something to do with Yang Chen. In any case, the three entered the shuttle together and embarked on the road to the Sea of No Return. From here to the Sea of No Return, it was almost the distance from the Central Plains to the South China Sea Islands, and it would take several months on the road. Ho Yun has always been puzzled about the power of Yang Chen. At the beginning of the road, Ho Yun challenged Yang Chen. "Kid, let's compare strength. How about it?" Ho Yun has never had much contact with others. Even if he joined Chunyang Palace, his communication with outsiders was very good. He never felt that there was anything wrong with him, a master of the Deshang stage, challenging Yang Chen, a young man in the Middle Jidan stage. It's just the power of the physical body. You can't use spiritual power. You can't rely on the realm to suppress people. Hearing Ho Yun's challenge, Yang Chen's eyes lit up, and he also became spirited. Yang Chen was also interested in Ho Yun's great strength. Yang Chen was not very clear about how much strength Ho Yun, who was the great ape king, had, but the huge stick that was refined by Ho Yun's own tail was full of weight. Without the power of thousands of Jin, he couldn't pick it up at all, let alone wave it. One was the great ape king. The other was a human who had cultivated the yellow turban strongman body, refining technique, and had reached the realm of mountain picking strength. At the same time, they both wanted to understand the strength of each other. As soon as Ho Yun challenged, Yang Chen immediately accepted the challenge. "Good." Ho Yun patted Yang Chen's shoulder with a little habit. "Refreshing. You are more refreshing than old Gue." I shouted at him several times, and he ignored me. A guy who is afraid of losing. "You are my favorite kid." As he said, Ho Yun stretched out his arm and put it on the table and said to Yang Chen, "Simple. Arm wrestle. Little Ling, you judge." Yang Chen also put his hand on the table and shook it with Ho Yun. Just like this, they felt the power from each other's hands, and they all had the excitement of meeting their match. Gong Sunling was also eager to see the world in chaos. Her slender hand grabbed the hands of the two people who were holding together and put them in the middle. She smiled and ordered, "Ready, start." With the order of Gong Sunling, the muscles on the arms of the two burly men began to bulge, and the blue veins appeared. There was a faint cracking sound from the place where the two people held hands, and it seemed that the bones of both sides also began to make sounds. Fortunately, the table under the arm was part of the shuttle, which was extremely hard and could withstand the great strength of the two people without shaking at all. In the eyes of Gong Sunling, who helped Yang Chun, Yang Chen's arm slowly began to press down Ho Yun's arm. Chapter 829. There was still a gap between the two. Yang Chun had a slight advantage, and then this advantage was getting bigger and bigger. Finally, Yang Chen screamed and pressed Ho Yun's arm on the table. Her husband won against the senior. Gong Sunling beamed with joy. Although she did not celebrate because of Ho Yun's face, the happiness from the heart could not be hidden. Ho Yun's face was full of disbelief, and he looked at Yang Chun as if he was looking at a monster. He was originally the mighty ape king. He was born with the power of thousands of kilograms. In addition to the tempering of his body, he thought that his physical strength had reached an incredible level, but he did not expect that he would be defeated by Yang Chun in the aspect that he was most proud of. Although it was just a simple little game of arm wrestling, it did not discount the superiority and inferiority of the strength between the two. Ho Yun actually lost to Yang Chun in physical strength. The mighty ape king lost to a human cultivator in strength, and it was only a cultivator in the middle Jiadan stage. Yang Chen's body refining technique had now reached the peak of the mountain picking strength and would soon enter the realm of the river turning strength. This kind of body refining technique of the immortal world was many times better than the tempering of the body when Ho Yun only relied on instinct and the improvement of the realm. Just to take care of Ho Yun's face, he did not instantly press his wrist down, otherwise Ho Yun would definitely be very ugly. How is it possible? Ho Yun almost screamed out. The unprecedented sense of frustration made him suddenly feel that his cultivation was simply meaningless. Even a human cultivator could suppress him in pure physical strength. What future was there for this cultivation? The body refining technique of this younger generation junior is not an ordinary body refining technique. Yang Chun smiled and explained, "In this world, perhaps only the Manchu giant elephant in the late Deshang stage can surpass the strength of this younger generation junior. Senior does not have to be surprised. What kind of body refining technique is so powerful? Can I cultivate it?" Ho Yun didn't care about any etiquette and never felt that it was shameful for a senior to ask the younger generation for advice, so he immediately asked. Of course, Yang Chun didn't mean to be selfish. The yellow turban strongman body refining technique was originally a cultivation method with extremely harsh conditions. It was not easy to meet one of his own people with such conditions. Of course, he would let him cultivate and strengthen his own strength. However, if you want to cultivate it, Martial Uncle Master has to promise me a condition. Before taking out the body refining technique, Yang Chun still made a condition. What conditions? Ho Yun didn't care about anything else and only cared about the content of the conditions. Martial Granduncle, you must absolutely ensure Ling's safety. Yang Chun pulled Gong Sunling and stood in front of Ho Yun. This time to the sea of no return. There are many dangers. Martial Uncle must ensure Ling's safety. I don't need you to tell me that. Ho Yun rolled his eyes at Yang Chun. Unless I die, no one can hurt Xiao Ling. With Ho Yun's guarantee, Yang Chun was relieved to explore the sea of no return this time. Holding the jade slip of the copied yellow turban strongman body refining technique, Yang Chun handed it to Ho Yun. According to Yang Chen's estimation, Ho Yun's physical strength was already equivalent to Yang Chen's cultivation to the middle stage of the 10,000 gene strength, which absolutely met the requirements of the yellow turban strongman body refining technique. However, Ho Yun was now in the Deshang stage, and his body had been tempered by two heavenly tribulations. Compared with Yang Chun, the difficulty of cultivation may be much higher. But even so, Ho Yun still began to cultivate the yellow turban strongman body refining technique in the mortal world. Compared with cultivating in the immortal world, It was not known how many advantages there were. Although Ho Yun's body refining technique was given to him, Yang Chun still felt that it was necessary to strengthen Ho Yun's combat effectiveness in order to better protect Gong Sunling. After thinking about it, he simply took out a jade bottle containing the 10th water true essence and handed it to Ho Yun at the same time. "What is this?" Ho Yun was not polite at all. He took it directly and opened it. In an instant, he found out what was in the jade bottle. His eyes widened, and he looked at Yang Chun even more incredulously. "I believe that with the help of this, the predecessor can cultivate to the realm of the 10,000 gene strength faster." Yang Chun pointed to the yellow turban strongman body, refining technique, and explained. The 10,000 gene strength only indicated a realm of the body refining technique, which was relative to the most basic conditions for cultivation. In actual cultivation, it meant that at least 10 times the physical strength would be improved in this realm. He believed that as long as Ho Yun could successfully cultivate the first layer, his combat effectiveness would be enough to increase by at least 2 times. This was the real power. The increase of twice the combat effectiveness was still a conservative estimate. But even so, Yang Chun was still worried about the sea of no return, for fear that Gong Sunling would be hurt. This time to explore the sea of no return, Yang Chun did not intend to take Gong Sunling and Ho Yun into the depths of a sea of no return, but wanted the two to find trouble with those powerful sea beasts on the periphery. As for Yang Chun himself, he must enter the interior of the sea of no return. Although the dragon tongue orchid could be collected from the outside, the weak dragon chi was definitely escaped from the interior of the sea of no return. Ho Yun was given the 10th water true essence, but Yang Chun did not give him the 10th water true secret art. The monster race had their own means to absorb the 10th water true essence, and there was no need for Yang Chun to do anything. Moreover, the process of absorbing the 10th water true essence was also a process of refining the body, which could promote the cultivation of the yellow turban strongman body refining technique. The next step was to hurry all the way. Ho Yun quietly cultivated the body refining technique, and Yang Chun was also controlling the profound spirit furnace to absorb the newly received seabed fire seeds. Gong Sunling still took on the job of taking care of Yang Chun, and the regular wine and dishes made Yang Chun eat with a smile. Ho Yun, who was immersed in cultivation, had no time and no interest in enjoying this kind of happiness between the two. Yang Chun's estimation was not wrong. With the help of the 10th water true essence, Ho Yun only took half a year to complete the cultivation of a yellow turban strongman body refining technique, which was several times faster than Yang Chun in the past. However, the speed of Ho Yun's body refining technique cultivation ended here. This time, with the help of the 10th water true essence, he completed the first layer of the body refining technique. In the future, his cultivation speed would definitely be much slower than that of Yang Chun. Ho Yun, who had completed his cultivation, had once again skyrocketed, and he was even thicker than Yang Chun. The surging force was emitted between his hands and feet, as if he could cause an invisible wind pressure with just a wave of his arm. Good cultivation method. Ho Yun was familiar with his current strength, and he couldn't help but sigh with some regret. If I had met you a few thousand years earlier. Only those who have cultivated the yellow turban strongman body refining technique will know the power of this body refining technique. It was a pity that Ho Yun still cultivated late. Otherwise, like Yang Chun, the strength of each realm was definitely more than 10 times or 20 times. The later the cultivation, the smaller the future achievements. Ho Yun sighed. The shuttle was almost close to the edge of the sea of no return. Chapter 830. This is the sea of no return. Gong Sunling looked at the endless calm sea, and it was really impossible to associate this calm sea with the dangerous name of the sea of no return. Ho Yun next to her frowned and stared closely at the bottom of the water, as if there would be a fierce sea beast suddenly jumping up. Under the calm sea, there are countless dangers hidden. Gong Sunling can't find it for the time being, but it doesn't mean that Ho Yun can't find it. This is only the outermost periphery of the sea of no return, and in fact, it has not yet reached the sea area of the sea of no return. Although the Sea of No Return is only a part of the South China Sea, it also includes tens of thousands of miles of sea area, and now it is just touching the edge. Let's separate here. Looking at the calm sea, Yang Chun turned his head and looked at Gong Sunling and Ho Yun again and said slowly. After Ho Yun completed his cultivation, Yang Chun told Gong Sunling and Ho Yun about his plans, and the three of them would act separately. He would go to the depths of the Sea of No Return to explore, while Gong Sunling and Ho Yun would hunt sea beasts on the periphery. After hearing Yang Chen's plan at first, Gong Sunling's first reaction was to disagree. What she meant was to die together and go in together. But soon, under the persuasion of Yang Chun, she agreed to Yang Chen's plan. There are many things with Ho Yun there. Yang Chen did not say too much detail. The Sea of No Return is definitely related to the Dragon Clan. Even if it is dangerous, he believes that since he got so many good things from the Dragon Palace treasure house, plus the dragon son Yazi Shao Tian, there should not be too much problem. However, if he wants to take Gong Sunling with him, Yang Chun may not be able to do it alone and may not be able to take care of her. It is possible to let Gong Sunling and Ho Yun stay in his own medicine garden or in the Dome Hall, but for some reason, Yang Chen always has a bad feeling, so he abandoned this method. For Gong Sunling and Ho Yun, this exploration in the depths of the Sea of No Return was unnecessary, so Yang Chun didn't want them to take risks. Originally, this was not the adventure in Yang Chen's plan, but because of Shao Tian, Yang Chun had to come and see it anyway. The closer to the Sea of No Return, the more intense the reaction of Shao Tian in the medicine garden. It seems that there is something in it that strongly attracts Shao Tian to move forward to the depths of the Sea of No Return. It is already imperative. Ho Yun was of the water attribute, so he had no problem carrying Gong Sunling. Originally, Yang Chen also intended to give the shuttle to Gong Sunling, but Gong Sunling refused. She knew the ability and speed of Yang Chen's shuttle in the water. With the shuttle, Yang Chen's safety in the Sea of No Return will be greater. The two sides parted ways, and Yang Chun drove the shuttle and quickly rushed to the depths of the Sea of No Return. In order to prevent any entanglement of sea beasts, Yang Chun took out the demon power crystal left by Lan Ying while flying. The demon power crystal of the sea race who ascended to the Deshang stage. In the ocean, it was a passport-like existence. No sea beast dared to attack Yang Chun. The kind of deep engraved in their instincts made the sea beasts along the way tremble in fear. Not to mention attacking Yang Chun, they didn't even dare to show their faces. The unimpeded flight all the way. At first it was still above the sea, but after flying for 2 days, there was a huge suction force under the sea, sucking Yang Chun and the shuttle into the sea. Entering the water, even through the shuttle, Yang Chun could feel the power of the terrifying ocean currents underwater. The terrifying ocean currents formed for unknown reasons, carrying a force to tear everything and wrap everything, rolled up the shuttle and dragged it to the unknown bottom of the sea. The powerful suction in the ocean currents, Yang Chun was even sucked into the sea in the air, barely able to control the direction a few times, but it was an extremely costly thing. The magic weapon of the Dragon Clan was powerful, especially the magic weapon stored in the treasure house of the Dragon Clan. Although the shuttle was not a magic weapon for body protection, it was not comparable to the protection of the Golden Bell. However, when it was in the water, the shuttle was like a swimming fish. Even if it was swept by the ocean currents, it could not help but sink to the bottom of the sea, but it had always maintained a rare state of balance. Yang Chun did not feel a little dislocation. The performance of the shuttle made Yang Chen's heart calmer and confirmed his previous guess. The interior of the Sea of No Return was definitely related to the Dragon Clan. There was no doubt about this, and Yang Chen's guess that the Dragon Clan magic weapon could also pass through here without any hindrance was also confirmed. The ocean currents had a certain regularity and seemed to flow in a certain direction. Yang Chun tried to control the shuttle and changed several different directions with difficulty and determined this. In the end, he simply gave up controlling the shuttle and let the ocean currents take him in a certain direction. Even in such a terrifying ocean current, Yang Chun still detected the existence of countless powerful sea beasts. The more extreme the environment, the easier it was to create some powerful guys. Mubo was like this, the old tree demon was also like this, and the same was true for these guys that Yang Chun saw in front of him. In this kind of ocean current that was enough to directly tear apart the ordinary Yuanying stage cultivators, these powerful sea beasts were like strolling in a garden, living safely. Perhaps they had been in such an environment since they were born, and they had already adapted to it, which also led to the existence of the monsters here. Each of them could be comparable to the peak Yuanying stage and even the masters of the Deshang stage. Fortunately, Lan Ying's monster power crystal was an absolute strong token in the ocean. Even if those fierce sea beasts were sometimes swept by the ocean currents not far from the shuttle, they would try their best to avoid it. However, Yang Chun still noticed that although these sea beasts lived very freely here, the trajectory of their actions was intentionally or unintentionally moving away from the direction of the current. Even if they sometimes floated along the current for a while when they were resting, they would soon swim in the opposite direction, as if there was something terrible in the destination of the ocean current. Everything seemed to indicate the danger of the destination of Yang Chen's trip, but Yang Chun was looking forward to it more and more. Xiao Tian couldn't help but start flying up and down. It seemed that he was very close to the goal. He didn't know what the dragon she was here. Yang Chun even guessed that there would be a living dragon. It must be known that in his previous life, Yang Chun had never seen a dragon anywhere else except in the immortal world. As early as hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years, or even earlier, the dragon clan had all arrived in the immortal world, and there was no one left in the mortal world or the spiritual world. Only a few creatures with a trace of faint dragon bloodline were passed down, and Xiao Tian was one of them. But if it weren't for the blood essence of the howling celestial dog, Xiao Tian would now be just a native dog, which was not surprising. Chapter 831. In less than half an hour, the shuttle came to a huge whirlpool under the high-speed drive of the terrifying ocean current. This huge whirlpool on the seafloor was the source of all the ocean currents and the source of the super-strong suction force. The shuttle once again showed flexibility in the ocean that was completely inconsistent with Yang Chen's cultivation base. In the process of rotating with the whirlpool, it still maintained a stable balance and did not make Yang Chun feel dizzy. The bottom of the sea where this whirlpool was located was a complete huge slate of unknown material, almost hundreds of miles. Outside the whirlpool, there were some unique creatures attached to the bottom of the sea, but on this slate, there was nothing. It was bare, and when his spiritual awareness touched it, he could even feel the kind of fineness and smoothness. He didn't know how many years this slate has been scoured by this powerful whirlpool. Even if it was a stubborn iron, it was estimated that it would have been ground into powder, but this slate still appeared so complete. The quality of the material was stunning. It was definitely an excellent material for refining the flying sword magic weapon. Coming here, not to mention anything else, as long as he could knock off a small piece from this huge slate, it would be worth the risk. Of course, the premise was that he had the ability to stay here, and he could also get a piece of the slate from this whirlpool that could almost tear up a Deshang stage master for tens of thousands of years without being damaged. Now Yang Chun has discovered that the shuttle can maintain balance and not be torn apart in the whirlpool. Not because of how strong the shuttle's protective ability is, but because the shuttle can effectively use and even decompose the power of the water flow to maintain the current situation. Sometimes it's not just brute force that can cope with the situation. The shuttle was slowly sucked towards the center of the whirlpool with the rotation of the whirlpool. The pressure outside was getting greater and greater, and the shuttle had begun to tremble slightly. This was a very dangerous sign, which meant that the power of the shuttle had been exerted to the extreme. If it went inside, it was likely to be unable to resist the pressure of the whirlpool and would break directly. At this moment, Yang Chun didn't think about anything else. He directly sacrificed the sea jasper and wrapped the shuttle in it. Since this sea-pouring jasper cup dared to be called sea-pouring, if it couldn't even cope with this whirlpool, would the Dragon Clan come up with such a powerful name? Sure enough, as Yang Chun expected, when the sea-pouring jasper cup came out, Even if it was still in the whirlpool, it was calm within a foot of the periphery of the Jasper Cup, as if the whirlpool had lost all its power. A foot away, it was still surging violently. The flying shuttle and the sea-pouring Jasper Cup, the two magic weapons produced in the treasure house of the Dragon Clan, have proved all of Yang Chen's guesses. As long as these magic weapons are in hand, Yang Chen will never have a problem. Because of the strength of the sea-pouring Jasper Cup, in this crazy vortex, Yang Chen cannot follow the flow, but slowly enter the center of the vortex from the periphery bit by bit. Of course, Yang Chen inevitably controlled the sea-pouring Jasper Cup to fall on the huge complete stone. With Yang Chen's eyesight, he couldn't see what the material of the stone was. Originally, it should have been possible to rely on the power of Xiao Tian to cut off a piece with a flying sword, but Yang Chen was afraid of what disastrous consequences would occur after destroying the integrity of the stone, so he didn't do it. There will be plenty of opportunities to do it in the future, so let's see what secrets there are in it first. In the middle of the stone, there was a huge, bottomless black hole. The original shape of the hole had a diameter of several feet. Before he got close, he could feel the terrifying suction coming from inside. The sea-pouring Jasper Cup could still maintain calmness within a foot radius, but within 100 feet of the entrance of the cave, there was only an inch of space left. Out of this range, it was a shuddering, turbulent force. This black hole was obviously where all the secrets were. Yang Chen moved forward 50 or 60 feet and was only 30 or 40 feet away from the hole. The protective range of the sea-pouring Jasper Cup had been reduced to a few points, almost close to the periphery of the sea-pouring Jasper Cup. Yang Chen was hesitating whether to enter the black hole. However, without waiting for Yang Chen to make a decision, Xiao Tian had eagerly rushed out of the medicine garden, quickly drilled out of the sea-pouring Jasper Cup, and rushed into the black hole. At this point, Yang Chen no longer thought about it and rushed forward, following Xiao Tian. However, when rushing into the dark hole, Yang Chen's spiritual awareness suddenly found that there were 5 buckles on the edge of the hole, evenly distributed in 5 directions of the circular hole. He didn't know what they were used for. Between the lightning and flint, Yang Chen's heart moved, and he took out the 5 elements hook. He put a set on his wrist, and the 5 elements of spirit power entered, and the 5 elements of the hook suddenly seemed to come alive. With the command of Yang Chen, the 5 hooks of the 5 elements lock have hooked a buckle each. Then Yang Chen's figure entered the black hole. The suction was getting stronger and stronger, and Yang Chen's falling figure in the hole was getting faster and faster. It was just a breath of time, and it had exceeded the limit that the spiritual power could control. No matter how Yang Chen used his spiritual power to fly, it was useless. If he wanted to fly with the sword, the flying sword could not be released at all. The situation has been completely out of control. Just when Yang Chen felt that the speed could no longer be controlled, his wrist was tight, and then there was a severe pain. The 5 elements hook abruptly pulled Yang Chen's wrist, easing the speed of Yang Chen's rapid fall. In such a high-speed state, he suddenly pulled his body by the strength of his wrist. If it weren't for the fact that Yang Chen's cultivation of the yellow turban strongman body, refining technique, had passed the realm of mountain-picking strength, this was enough to break Yang Chen's arm. Even so, Yang Chen's wrist was still extremely painful, as if it was going to break. Finally, after the speed slowly eased down, Yang Chen was able to use his spiritual power to relieve the pain, which made him feel a little better. However, Yang Chen's body was pulled by the hook, but one Qian's 5 female apprentices who had been staying in Yang Chen's dome hall, Yang Chen's 5 puppets, under this powerful pull, directly rushed out of the dome hall, maintaining the high speed just now, and in the blink of an eye, they disappeared out of the scope of Yang Chen's spiritual awareness exploration. This almost scared Yang Chen to death. Fortunately, he had an ominous premonition and did not let Gong Sunling follow him. Otherwise, if Gong Sunling fell like the 5 puppets, without the protection of a sea-pouring Jasper Cup, it would definitely make Yang Chen regret it for life. At this moment, Yang Chen even began to doubt his action of rushing down with Xiao Tian, whether it was right or wrong. Chapter 832. The long rope of the 5-element hook was made of dragon tendons. The 5 strands were twisted into one. It was extremely tough and could be long or short. At this moment, with the control of Yang Chun, it slowly grew at a uniform speed, as if it was hanging Yang Chun down. All the way down slowly, Yang Chun was afraid. Fortunately, Gong Sun Ling and Ho Yun did not come together. Otherwise, with this posture, even if Ho Yun fell, it was estimated that it would be the end of a broken body. Fortunately, the Penglai Divine Wood Tree Demon was rooted in the medicine garden and did not fall out, which was fortunate. Another fear was that, fortunately, when he entered the hole, he had a flash of light and hooked the 5-element hook on the 5 buckles. If not, even with the protection of the sea jasper cup, it was estimated that he would inevitably die. The kind of fear of death, this was the most frightening time after Yang Chen's rebirth. Even when he was chased by Luo Yuan, a master of the late Deshang stage, Yang Chun did not have such fear. Perhaps Luo Yuan's pursuit of Yang Chun was just because he was unwilling to give up his long-time sacrificial refining of the flying sword. So he refused to use the Bloody River. Even if he was caught up, it could actually be said that it was under the control of Yang Chun. But this time, it was obviously out of the control of Yang Chun. In Yang Chen's memory, there has never been any news about this place. It has never appeared. Before the old Dragon King died, he told him about the treasure house of the Dragon Clan, but he did not say anything about it. However, everything here shows that this absolutely has an unbreakable relationship with the treasure house of the Dragon Clan. Whether it was the flying shuttle, the sea jasper cup, or the 5-element hook, all of them reflected this. Without these things, coming here was definitely a dead word. There was no other possibility. The strength of a Dragon Clan was by no means what human cultivators could imagine. In the process of falling at a uniform speed, Yang Chun also felt a little difficult. Originally, this 5-element hook was designed for 5 people with different attributes. Now that Yang Chun was controlling it alone, it was naturally more strenuous than 5 people. However, because Yang Chun only needed 1 person to control it, it saved the trouble of 5 people to synchronize the control. It was more flexible and consistent than the control of 5 people, but there was not much danger. The middle Deshang stage spiritual awareness was enough to control the 5-element hook. The only thing he needed to pay attention to was that Yang Chun had to maintain a sufficient input of spiritual power. This was even more effortless, not to mention the massive first with spiritual solution and 7th metal spiritual solution in the gourd. There were countless good things in the medicine garden that could be used to supplement spiritual power at any time. With the help of the 5 elements cable hook, Yang Chun was able to calculate how high he had fallen. 10,000 zhang, 20,000 zhang, all the way until he was almost 10,000 zhang. Suddenly, Yang Chun's eyes lit up and his feet shook as he stepped on something. Sure enough, it was a magic weapon made of dragon tendons. The long rope of the 5-element hook was now thin, but it was extremely tough. Under the huge suction, there was no sign of it breaking. At this point, the huge suction force suddenly disappeared without a trace, and the power that tore everything apart also disappeared. Suddenly, he was in a bright place, which was completely different from the darkness at the bottom of the sea. From above, there was no light here at all. After taking back the sea jasper cup, Yang Chun began to look around carefully. This was a huge space, surrounded by dozens of huge stone pillars that were hundreds of feet high. At first glance, it looked like a huge palace. The aura here was very similar to the aura in the Dragon Palace treasure house. There was no need to ask, this was definitely the work of the Dragon Clan. However, what made Yang Chun strange was that compared with the Dragon Palace treasure house, there seemed to be a sense of decay here, which was very puzzling. Immediately afterward, Yang Chun found that he was not standing on the ground, but above a small hill about 100 feet high. Taking a closer look at the hill, he was suddenly shocked and hurriedly jumped down from it. Where was this a hill? It was simply the corpses of countless powerful and incomparable sea monsters piled up. Falling from such a high hole, under the effect of the huge suction, it was impossible to control the speed. Even if it was a master of the Deshang stage, they would only be left with the fate of falling into a meat patty. This hill, which was hundreds of feet high, was stacked together by countless meat patties. It has long been impossible to see what kind of sea monster it was. The only thing that was certain was that they were at least Deshang stage monsters. Ordinary monsters. Even before they reached the interior of the whirlpool, they would be crushed into pieces in the edge area. No matter how powerful the cultivator was, under the arrangement of the Dragon Clan, if they did not get anything from the treasure house of the Dragon Palace, they would only be able to go back. The Sea of No Return. This was the reason why the Sea of No Return was called the Sea of No Return. The place where Yang Chun had just landed was a few pools of fresh meat patties. Needless to say, those were the 5 female apprentices of Wan Xian who fell from above. Perhaps they were the ones with the lowest cultivation base in this flesh hill. Yang Chun did not see the figure of Xiao Tian, but he could feel the existence of Xiao Tian. It was still alive, and almost nothing happened to it. He really didn't know how it survived such a terrible fall. Perhaps everything here was designed for the Dragon Clan. Xiao Tian, as a dragon, had the aura of the Dragon Clan, so it was safe and sound. Knowing that Xiao Tian was safe, Yang Chun was also relieved and began to look around. The huge palace was clearly matched with the huge body of the Dragon Clan. This was not a palace where humans lived at all. Could this be the legendary Dragon Palace? Yang Chun was not sure. No one had ever seen the Dragon Palace. They had only heard that the Dragon Palace had always been magnificent, and there were precious treasures and riches everywhere. But as for the specifics, no one knew except for those who had lived in the Dragon Palace in the past. Apart from these huge pillars and the empty palace, there was only that small mountain of flesh and blood. Xiao Tian didn't know where he was wandering. It seemed that he wanted to absorb all the remaining dragon chi here. Yang Chun didn't care about Xiao Tian. Here, Xiao Tian would definitely be safer than himself. After turning around, Yang Chun returned to the front of the Hill of Bones. It must be known that among this pile of hills, except for the 5 female apprentices of Wan Xian who were at the peak Jidan stage, the others were all Deshang stage master's bones without exception. This pile of hills was definitely the best tonic for the Blood Demon Vine sword and the Blood Demon Vine that was still in the recovery period in the Medicine Garden. When he came to the Treasure Mountain, how could he return empty-handed? Without thinking about it, Yang Chun sacrificed the Blood Demon Vine flying sword, controlled the flying sword, regardless of the consequences, drilled into the pile of master's bones, and began to absorb as much as he could. Chapter 833. Except for these peerless masters, nothing else could enter here. And these peerless masters, even if they have already died, and their bodies have even been smashed into meat paste, but the bodies have not decayed, and even the blood is still in the form of liquid, gathering in a large pit on the ground under the hill. The blood pool formed by the blood of the masters of the Deshang stage was simply the most delicious meal for the Blood Demon Vine flying sword. Plunging into the blood pool at the bottom of the mountain, the Blood Demon Vine flying sword began to absorb the blood madly. Yang Chun and the Blood Demon Vine flying sword were connected. At this moment, he could even perceive the kind of joy coming from the flying sword. It was like a hungry and thirsty disaster suddenly rushed into the banquet of the Manchu Han Imperial Feast, or it was the kind that did not need to pay the bill. It was very happy. And the hill-like bones, Yang Chun did not waste, and quickly began to collect them into the medicine garden and piled them under the Blood Demon Vine plant. The Blood Demon Vine, which had its main root cut off, has not fully recovered so far. However, Yang Chun believed that with such a large number of master's bones, when the Blood Demon Vine was completely absorbed, the main root would grow again, and the period of recovery would not be far away. To carry these bones, Yang Chun didn't even have to do it himself. As long as he controlled the Blood Demon Vine to extend its vines and roll these bones in. Yang Chun himself stood in the same place and did not even move his feet. Even so, it took Yang Chun a whole day to completely empty a hill of more than 100 feet. During this time, the Blood Demon Vine flying sword had completely sucked up the blood pool at the bottom of the hill. As if it had eaten too much, it was directly received by Yang Chun into the Blood Demon Vine in his sea of consciousness, and was tempered like other life source magic weapons. Now Yang Chun had a lot of flying swords, The Great Een in Yang 5 Elements Flying Sword already had the first wood Flying Sword, Peng Lai Divine wood Flying Sword, second wood Flying Sword, Blood Demon Vine Flying Sword, third Fire Flying Sword, Bright Ray Sword refined by Gao Yu, fourth Fire Sword Embryo, fifth Earth Flying Sword, Ming Guangruo's Life Source Flying Sword, seventh Metal Flying Sword, Immortal Beheading Blade. The remaining 4 flying swords, Yang Chun has not yet refined or found them. In his sea of consciousness, there was the Immortal Beheading Blade, fifth Earth Flying Sword, Bright Ray Sword, and now the Blood Demon Vine Sword. However, unlike the absolute life source magic weapon Immortal Beheading Blade, the other 9 of the Great Een and Yang 5 Elements Flying Sword were used as sword souls. They did not need to be tempered at a deep level like the Immortal Beheading Blade for hundreds of thousands of years, as long as they were tempered at a shallow level. When needed, Yang Chun could take out these flying swords at any time. The last time he used the Bright Ray Sword, after using it, he sent it back to his sea of consciousness to continue. The same was true for the first wood Flying Sword. After the scouring of the first wood True Essence Spiritual Solution, the quality has been qualitatively improved, and it was also tempered in the sea of consciousness. Now that the Blood Demon Vine Flying Sword has drunk the blood of the Master, it has also reached the point where it can be further tempered with spiritual awareness. When it was necessary to use the Flying Sword, Yang Chun still had the newly refined 4th Fire Flying Sword, which was enough for him to use. Moreover, in addition to the 4th Fire Flying Sword, Yang Chun also had at least thousands of other flying swords. Any one of them, for the current Yang Chun, did not make much difference. After cleaning up the bones and blood of the Masters of the Hill, Yang Chun found that the ground had been shattered by countless impacts. Even though the Masters had also been smashed into meat patties when they fell down, they had just regained their spiritual power here before they died, and they had destroyed a large area of the ground completely. Even if the ground arranged by the Dragon Clan here was made of extremely hard materials, it would not help. The dying counterattack of the Masters of the Deshang stage was by no means something that could not be controlled and repaired by some materials. What surprised Yang Chun was that after cleaning up these, he found that the large area on the ground that was broken turned out to be a complete nautical map. This nautical map was a large area distributed separately. Above this area was the hole, and there was no pillar on the nautical map. Like the nautical map in the Dragon Palace Treasure House, this was the nautical map of the South China Sea. Unfortunately, because of the countless impacts, the nautical map has been completely broken. Even if Yang Chun got close to the location of the marked spiritual vein, he could not get any spiritual power from the nautical map. It was really a pity that such a good treasure was actually arranged in this place by the Dragon Clan. It faced the crazy impact of those Masters of the Deshang stage and finally caused it to break. Perhaps the original intention of putting the nautical map here was to rely on the nautical map to absorb the spiritual power of the South China Sea spiritual vein to repair itself. But he did not expect that some of the impacts were so great that even the South China Sea nautical map was shattered. Once the nautical map was shattered, the ability to absorb spiritual power was suddenly lost, and finally it could only become more and more fragmented, becoming what it was now. When Yang Chun cleaned up all this and revealed the nautical map, the figure of Xiao Tian appeared from nowhere and frequently flew above the nautical map. It seemed that he wanted to pass through the nautical map and enter the ground. Yang Chen's heart moved, and he used the merit ring to keep the fragments of the sea map intact and collected them into the merit ring. Such a large nautical map, but also to maintain the position of each other. Except for the merit ring, the ordinary Chinquan bag or the medicine garden could not do it at all. As soon as the nautical map was collected, a huge hole was suddenly revealed, and a very familiar aura came from it to Yang Chun. As soon as he probed with his spiritual sense, he was involuntarily pulled into the hole. This was not the first time that Yang Chun had experienced such a situation. In the air, he did not panic and called out the sea jasper and the gourd, and easily fell into the huge lake below. In the middle of the hole, there was a huge lake of 10th water spiritual solution. Because it was so huge, Yang Chen's spiritual awareness couldn't sweep the edge at once. He didn't know how many years of accumulation of 10th water spiritual solution. Yang Chun suspected that the entire 10th water spiritual solution in the South China Sea was gathered here. It was a magic weapon for condensing 10th water true essence. With the sea jasper as a buffer, Yang Chun had no difficulty in collecting these 10th water spiritual solution with a gourd. It was just a matter of time. The Dragon Clan didn't know how many years of accumulation of 10th water spiritual solution. It was so easy for Yang Chun. Now Xiao Tian's body was like a giant python, and it was easy to entangle Yang Chun for a dozen laps. When collecting the 10th water spiritual solution, Xiao Tian impatiently circled around Yang Chun's side, constantly hovering and dancing, very anxious. The abnormality of Xiao Tian also made Yang Chun look forward to it more and more. Could it be that under this 10th water spiritual solution was the real good thing? Was this 10th water spiritual solution like a natural insurance to prevent cultivators from entering the real Dragon Palace? Chapter 834. This was the easiest time for Yang Chun to control the gourd to absorb the spiritual solution. He didn't have to condense the pill when he absorbed it. And he didn't have to worry about whether the magic weapon would be broken. He just had to let go of the speed of absorption. The combination of the sea jasper and the gourd was indeed the fastest combination to absorb the 10th water spiritual solution. The huge lake surface was decreasing at a speed visible to the naked eye. And in the gourd, it quickly formed a 10th water spiritual solution sea that was many times larger than the first wood spiritual solution lake. Like a long whale sucking water, it was already extremely fast in Yang Chun's view. But for this 10th water spiritual solution sea that had been accumulated for many years, it still seemed to be a drop in the bucket. The speed was really too slow. The crazy absorption lasted for almost a few months, and during this time, Xiao Tian was almost the most anxious one. He hovered over Yang Chun's head all day and did not even go back to the Dragon Tower. After absorbing for almost 5 months, Yang Chun suddenly noticed some changes in the gourd, and then he quickly understood what the changes were. Speaking of it, this gourd was actually the same as the mountain river geographical map. However, the mountain river geographical map needed to enrich the mountains and rivers to enhance its power, and this gourd needed to be enriched with a lot of spiritual solution to upgrade. As long as it was a liquid with a strong spiritual power, it was what the gourd needed to upgrade. The first wood spiritual solution, 7th metal spiritual solution, plus the current 10th water spiritual solution, was clearly the most original first wood true essence, 7th metal true essence, and 10th water true essence. It was simply a pure spiritual power liquid. Yang Chun controlled the gourd to absorb every drop of spiritual solution, which was equivalent to Yang Chun sacrificially refining the gourd. After a large number of baptisms of the first with spiritual solution, 7th metal spiritual solution, and 10th water spiritual solution, it finally reached a state of qualitative change, and its power was upgraded. The most obvious change was the shape. It was originally a very ordinary, crooked mouth-dry gourd, but now it had become a delicate gourd with a green light on the surface. The size was half smaller than before, and it was half the size of a palm, like a jade carving gourd that had been played for a long time. If Yang Chun did not pour the liquid in front of the gourd, this would be a beautiful jade carving gourd. There was not the slightest overflow of spiritual power. Even if others used their divine sense to explore it at a close distance, they would only think that it was an ordinary jade carving. Only by holding it in one's hand would one understand that it was a container. However, he could only discover one of the liquids in the container that Yang Chun was willing to let others know about. As for what could be poured out of it, it would depend on Yang Chun's control at any time. The jade gourd had been cleansed and refined by such a huge amount of spiritual liquid. It had thoroughly imprinted Yang Chun's imprint in every place. Even if the gourd was obtained by others, without a higher cultivation base than Yang Chun, and without twice the amount of spiritual liquid that Yang Chun had absorbed, it was impossible to completely remove Yang Chun's imprint. The gourd itself had shrunk, but the space within it had not shrunk. Instead, it had grown larger. At the very least, Yang Chun felt as if it could easily contain the entire world. Of course, it was purely a feeling. Yangchen would never do that. Such a beautiful gourd that could hold all kinds of spiritual liquid, it was absolutely a waste to hold ordinary water. Yangchen would rather go empty, and would not do such a boring thing. After the jade gourd was upgraded, the speed of absorbing the spiritual liquid had increased several times again. Yangchen thought that this 10th water spiritual solution, C, could be absorbed in a few months at most, but he did not expect that this absorption would take a whole year. The huge 10th water spiritual solution, C, finally bottomed out, revealing the situation below. Before waiting for Yangchen to completely absorb it and see what was below, Xiao Tian had already screamed and flew out, rushing in a certain direction. Yangchen quietly waited for all the 10th water spiritual solution to be completely absorbed, and after not wasting a single drop, he began to explore the surrounding environment. Just like the 7th metal spiritual solution lake, after all the spiritual liquid disappeared, the bottom was the 10th water crystal stone that had been condensed under strong pressure, and he didn't know how many layers it was thick. Anyway, there would be nothing wrong with Xiao Tian here. Yangchen couldn't do anything else, but first he searched all the 10th water crystal stone into the merit ring. This kind of good thing could only be encountered and not sought. If he encountered it and didn't collect it, it would be a crime. Yangchen was a good man who abided by the law, so he carefully searched all the 10th water crystal stone and didn't intend to leave any. There was no need to ask here. There must be a formation to condense the 10th water true essence. Even if Yangchen plundered it, as long as the formation was not destroyed, it would slowly accumulate the 10th water true essence, slowly form the 10th water spiritual solution, and then form the 10th water crystal stone. This kind of temporarily ownerless thing, Yangchen took it without any psychological burden. There was no dragon in the mortal world, so Xiao Tian was the most qualified to accept the wealth of these dragons. There was no difference between Xiao Tian taking it and Yangchen taking it. Removing all the 10th water spiritual solution, this was another huge space. Xiao Tian had already arrived at a certain place and was flying anxiously, as if urging Yangchen to hurry to its side and let him move the 10th water crystal stone away. Yangchen quickly collected the 10th water crystal stone. After arriving at the place where Xiao Tian was flying, he didn't let Xiao Tian wait for a long time and immediately began to collect the 10th water crystal stone in that area. However, after only collecting a few times, Yangchen stopped and looked at the crystal stones below incredibly, as if he couldn't believe his eyes. In the almost connected 10th water crystal stone, there was a complete skeleton as if inlaid in it, which made people feel so incredible. This was a skeleton like a giant python. At first, Yangchen thought it was a complete dragon skeleton, but seeing that Xiao Tian's mind was not on this skeleton at all, Yangchen knew it was not. As he carefully cleaned up the surrounding crystal stones, the complete skeleton finally revealed its true appearance. After Yangchen collected some of the crystal stones, Xiao Tian screamed and rushed in one direction. Yangchen was stunned and looked at the complete skeleton, full of joy. The body was hundreds of feet long, like a giant python, and the huge skull was similar to the shape of a dragon head. The only difference was that there was no horn. Judging from the shape of the skull, the bone was not broken, but was born without a horn. Such a body, such a shape, Yangchen immediately had a preliminary judgment in his mind. This was a complete skeleton of the flood dragon. I just don't know why this flood dragon died here. This is not a question that Yangchen needs to care about. Yangchen just wants to know why this flood dragon stretched out of the 10th water crystal stone, and even the flesh and blood had been melted away. How did this skeleton remain intact? Chapter 835. No matter what kind of master it was, if they could not withstand the power of the huge spiritual liquid, then there was only one result when they entered the spiritual liquid. The body would explode and die. And it was a crushing burst of the whole body, leaving no trace. This point, Yangchen has proved it with the lives of countless monsters and demonic cultivators in the first wood true essence spiritual solution lake and the 7th metal true essence spiritual solution lake. The only and inevitable outcome for those people who fell into the spiritual liquid lake was that they would explode. Even if it was a powerful monster and demonic cultivator, it was useless. There was no magic weapon that could withstand the power of the spiritual liquid. There was no way to survive. But the skeleton of the flood dragon in front of him obviously violated this law. Although the flood dragon was not a pure dragon, it should not lead to the killing of the dragon clan. There was no sign of injury on the bones. The possible explanation was that it could only be exploded in the 10th water, true essence spiritual solution. For Yang Chun, no matter how the flood dragon died, no matter why its skin and flesh melted after it died, and even why it was here and so on, these were not important. The important thing was that the skeleton of this flood dragon was completely preserved. This flood dragon skeleton was completely preserved in the 10th water, true essence spiritual solution. And after condensing into a 10th water crystal stone, it was still not damaged at all. This was absolutely exciting. Yang Chun reached out and gently pinched the bones. The hard bones did not change at all. As Yang Chun gradually increased his strength, the bones only bent slightly and returned to their original state. It was hard but very tough, and it was not known how many years it had existed in the 10th water crystal stone. Was there a better material than this complete skeleton for Yang Chen's 10th water flying sword? After carefully examining the flood dragon skeleton from beginning to end, confirming that there was no small bone left, Yang Chen carefully collected all the bones in their original state, just like the broken nautical maps, and received them into the merit ring. After doing this, Yang Chun continued to collect the 10th water crystal stones on the ground. These 10th water crystal stones were not known to be hundreds of feet thick. Even if Yang Chun used a merit ring to collect them desperately, it still took a lot of time. Just collecting these 10th crystal stones took almost a month for Yang Chun to fully collect them. Fortunately, the space of the merit ring was large enough. Otherwise, Yang Chen's ordinary chinquan bag could not hold so many 10th water crystal stones. After cleaning everything up, Yang Chun discovered that there was also a complete stone slab with a circumference of several hundred miles. No one knew how much effort the Dragon Clan had expended to create such a huge and complete material. There were countless exquisite patterns on the stone slab, forming a huge formation that spanned hundreds of miles. At this moment, Xiao Tian was at the center of the diagram, flying up and down anxiously, but he couldn't find a way to enter. Yang Shan suddenly discovered that the location of Xiao Tian at the moment should be the location of the head of the dragon skeleton. In that position, there was a semicircular depression on the stone slab. It was unknown what it was used for. Yang Chun flew into the air and started to look from the highest place. Only then did he see that the whole stone slab was an original stone slab. All the patterns formed a huge and complex circle, and the center of the circle was on the pit. Landing next to the pit, as soon as Yang Chun stood still, Xiao Tian came over and his huge head flew up and down. It seemed that he wanted Yang Chun to find a way. Looking at the semicircular depression, Yang Chun still couldn't understand the role of this depression. In his mind, the pattern of the formation was completely analyzed, but he still couldn't figure it out. The secret method of the Dragon Clan was not something that everyone could understand. Even if Yang Chun had the memory of the great principal Golden Immortal, Yang Chun did not know. In the memory of his previous life, no creature in the mortal world could get involved in the secrets of the Dragon Clan. When the East China Sea Dragon King died, he only said about the treasure house, but he didn't mention anything about the things here. However, everything here was closely related to the things in the treasure house of the Dragon Clan. The sea-pouring jasper cup, the shuttle, the 5-element rope hook, and the jade gourd, all of them were things in the treasure house. So the situation here was related to which treasure of the Dragon Clan? Looking at the semicircular depression, Yang Chen's heart suddenly moved. He roughly estimated the size of the depression, and the huge dragon bead in the treasure house of the Dragon Palace suddenly appeared in his mind. Could it be that the dragon bead had to be placed in this place to be triggered? The formation here needs the dragon bead to be triggered? Yang Chun stared at the depression and couldn't help sweating a little. Such a big dragon bead. How precious was it? Was it just a key used to trigger the formation here? Or as long as it could provide a huge amount of spiritual power energy. After thinking about it, Yang Chun decided to give it a try first. He had already worked hard to get here, and he would never be reconciled if he didn't try it. Did he have to wait for Xiao Tian to grow for many years and then pick up the dragon bead? Taking out a 10th water crystal stone, the 4th fire-flying sword quickly carved the crystal stone into a complete sphere. The size was similar to that of the semicircular depression, and then Yang Chun put the crystal stone ball on the depression. It was strange to say that it was originally completely covered with 10th water spiritual solution, and the formation did not have any reaction. However, as soon as the crystal stone ball was put on it, it suddenly began to shine. Starting from the depression, the lines lit up, and with the crystal stone ball as the center, the bright lines expanded to the surroundings. The speed of asking the way was very fast, and in the blink of an eye, it spread out to a radius of dozens of feet. Yang Chen's face suddenly showed a smile. It seemed that he guessed correctly. This was a general hub that provided spiritual power, and it was not necessary to use the dragon bead. As long as enough spiritual power could be provided to light up the entire formation, the formation would naturally be launched. Even if it was the dragon race, it would not be necessary to use the dragon bead to trigger a gatekeeping formation, right? You know, a dragon bead means the life of a dragon, and the dragon race is not prosperous enough to not put the lives of the people in their eyes, right? Xiao Tian has begun to fly again with joy, seeing that he could enter another secret place of the dragon race. Xiao Tian's urgent mood was even more urgent than Yang Chen's, but because he couldn't speak, he could express it in this way. However, the happiness of Xiao Tian and Yang Chen only lasted for a short time. In less than half a stick of incense, the lines on the slate were only a few miles in diameter, and the 10th water crystal stone ball had been drained of all the spiritual power and disappeared without a trace. Those parts that lit up after a few breaths of time were not supplemented by subsequent spiritual power and soon dimmed again, and finally returned to its original state as if nothing had happened. Chapter 836. The spiritual power contained in a piece of 10th water crystal stone is hundreds of times that of the same volume of 10th water spiritual solution. And the spiritual power contained in a drop of 10th water spiritual solution is hundreds of times that of a drop of the same volume of 10th water true essence. In this way, the spiritual power contained in such a large 10th water crystal stone ball was enough to be equal to that of a master of the peak Yuanying stage. It was unexpected that even 1/10 of the formation was not lit up. There were a lot of top-grade spirit stones, but at best, they were about the same level as the crystal stone, and it was not worth wasting them. The spiritual power required for this formation was enormous. The most hateful thing was that the key was not the amount of spiritual power, but the amount of spiritual power that could be provided in the large volume of the crystal stone ball. Yang Chun tried other methods, such as carving the lower half of the 10th crystal stone into a semicircle, just in line with the pit, leaving some more parts above. After the result was put on, it seemed that the formation could still judge the shape of the crystal stone and refuse to start. If it was changed to a circular shape, it could be started again. He didn't know how the formation did this, and Yang Chun had no way to do it for the time being. Did he really have to use the dragon bead? It seems that in this world, only the dragon bead can have such a huge supply of spiritual power. Xiao Tian has been quietly watching Yang Chun do the experiment. He was still waiting with great interest, but now he also has some anxious meaning and began to fly again. After thinking about it, Yang Chun still couldn't think of a way. What was more spiritual power than the 10th crystal stone? Under the urging of Xiao Tian, Yang Chun had to rack his brains to think. After thinking for a while, Yang Chun still felt that he should look at what he had on him. Recently, he had received too many things. Maybe there was something strange that could provide a huge amount of spiritual power. In the Chinquin bag, there were things that Yang Chun did not attach much importance to. After looking through it, there was nothing special. So, Yang Chun began to search in the merit ring. Turning over one by one, Yang Chun suddenly found something, and his heart moved, and he took out the thing that was placed in the corner of the merit ring. It was a walnut-sized ball that glowed with a blue light. It contained a powerful spiritual force. Before rushing to the sea of no return, Yangchen also used this kind of thing many times to drive away some powerful sea beasts, so as not to delay his journey. This bead was the crystallization of the demon power left by Lan Ying before she ascended. At the end of the day, this was also a crystallization of spiritual power, but it was condensed by a great demon before the tribulation and ascension. The spiritual power contained in it was simply incredible. It would automatically release a powerful pressure. In the sea, there were no sea beasts that dared to face it head-on. The old tree demon had studied demonic power crystals, and so had Ho Yun. However, in the end, it was a sea monster. Its cultivation method was different from theirs, so the help it could provide was limited. Yangchen's only use for it was as a sea pass. What was embarrassing was that Lan Ying's monster power crystal could only be applied in the sea creature clan. After arriving on land, it became a target that many monster clans wanted to snatch. At that time, the second city lord of the Banyan Tree Immortal's cave was greedy because of this monster power crystal. He forcibly chased after Yangchen and was killed by Yangchen as a result. In addition to the inappropriate size, it seems that this monster power crystal fully meets the requirements of containing huge spiritual power. Yangchen thought about it, took out another piece of 10th water crystal stone, carved it into a ball, but hollowed out the center of the ball, leaving a passage, stuffed the monster power crystal into it, and sealed the passage with another suitable crystal stone. Then the 10th water true secret art was launched, and the gap between the two 10th water crystal stones was glued. Before Lan Ying ascended, she not only cultivated Yangchen's transformation secret art, but also absorbed the 10th water true essence given by Yangchen. In a monster power crystal left behind, there was a strong 10th water true essence aura, which was the same as the 10th water crystal stone. This was precisely the reason why Yangchen dealt with it like this. Holding this processed 10th water crystal stone ball, Yangchen carefully placed it on the semicircular pit again. After putting it in place, Yangchen pushed away a few steps, and together with Xiao Tian, he carefully watched the changes in the crystal stone ball. After a while, it seemed that the crystal stone ball did not have any reaction, and the lines on the stone slab did not show any signs of lighting up. Looking at this situation, Yangchen couldn't help but sigh in his heart. It seemed that this cheating was not so easy. People didn't recognize it at all. He couldn't help but admit that this formation left by the Dragon Clan was really powerful. It could even judge the shape of the spiritual power source. This was something that Yangchen had not encountered even in the immortal world. It seemed that the Dragon Clan could always be strong, and it was not without reason. It could be seen from these unique formations. Since the method of cheating didn't work, Yangchen could also sigh secretly. It was a pity that he had reached this point, but he was blocked outside the door and couldn't get in. But at the moment, there was no good way. He could only return here and then find a way to get the Dragon Clan in the treasure house of the Dragon Clan. It was estimated that only the Dragon Bead could meet the requirements of this spiritual power source. Just as he was about to step forward and take back the processed crystal stone ball, the crystal stone ball suddenly flashed, and then the lines on the stone slab began to light up again. Yangchen's eyes suddenly lit up with these lines, and the processed crystal stone ball actually worked. He hurriedly flew to a high place and looked at the bright range of those patterns. Xiao Tian was also a little surprised, but this time he did not fly, but directly on Yangchen's body. His eyes followed Yangchen's gaze and stared at the bright patterns. After a while, the patterns had lit up to the last stop range, but this time it did not stop here, but continued to expand outward. In Yangchen's heart, there was a burst of tension. In the current situation, it was obvious that the demon power crystal of Lan Ying played a role. However, how much stronger this demon power crystal was than the 10th crystal stone, everything was still unknown. Yangchen was not afraid of losing the demon power crystal. He was afraid of falling short when he was about to succeed. The frustration of failure was the enemy of cultivation. Under Yangchen's worry, the patterns on the stone slab lit up all the way 20%, 30%, 50%, 80%, 90%, until all the patterns were lit up and there was no sign of dimming. And the 10th crystal stone ball still maintained its original size, quietly placed on the pit. Finally, Yang Chen's heart was finally relieved. The crystal stone ball has not disappeared, which means that there are still demon power crystals left, not all used up. Lighting up the patterns was only the first step, and then the formation would be launched, but he didn't know if the demon power crystal could still hold up. Chapter 837. It couldn't be helped but be said that Yang Chen was confused. The memory of ascension in his previous life may have been too long ago, so long that he had forgotten what the quality of spiritual power would be improved after the tribulation. The fundamental reason why the old tree demon and Ho Yun couldn't comprehend more about the crystallization of Lan Ying's demon power was that after the baptism of the wind tribulation, the spiritual power would undergo a qualitative change. Without the experience of the wind tribulation, how could they comprehend anything with two completely different levels of power? All the patterns were lit up, and the formation began to launch. A white light burst from the circular formation below, enveloping the entire space, including Yang Chun and Xiao Tian. All of them were wrapped in light, and there was no trace of them from the outside. All the lights flickered for a while before extinguishing in an instant. There was no one left in the huge space, including the crystal ball that was placed in the semicircular pit. Everything had disappeared without a trace. Yang Chun and Xiao Tian's body was light, and suddenly they appeared in another empty space. As soon as it appeared, Yang Chun felt an incomparably huge dragon chi, which filled the entire space, carrying an irresistible majesty, which naturally made people feel a shock impulse. In the air, Yang Chun looked down and saw a shocking scene. On the ground under his and Xiao Tian's feet, there were dozens of dragons lying in disorder. However, this space was too big. The huge dragon body was like a hill. In the eyes of Yang Chun, it was just dozens of small earthworms. Dragon Clan, the powerful Dragon Clan, there was actually the existence of the Dragon Clan in the mortal world. This discovery made Yang Chun couldn't believe his eyes. From the mouth of the Dragon Clan that he had contacted in his previous life, Yang Chen knew that the Dragon Clan had already left the mortal world and never stayed again. But how could these dragons in front of him be explained? Xiao Tian had already rushed down, but Yang Chun was still in a deep shock. He couldn't believe that his common sense had been overturned. How was this possible? Yang Chun, who was still in shock, soon discovered that the dragons below had already lost all signs of life. This discovery made the shock in Yang Chen's heart lessen a little. If it was just the corpse of a giant dragon, then Yang Chun would be able to accept it even more. However, after discovering this, Yang Chun was overjoyed. Gao Yu had only obtained 2 dragon horns, but it was already like she had obtained a precious treasure. The Mountain River geographical map was just made of dragon skin, and the 5-element hook was made of dragon tendons and dragon bones. These were just a part of the dragon's body. However, there were dozens of intact giant dragon corpses at the bottom. Compared to this, the flood dragon skeleton outside was nothing more than trash. No one would pick it up even if it was thrown away. Immediately, Yang Chun could no longer contain his excitement and rushed towards the corpses of the giant dragons. If he didn't cherish such a good thing, he would be struck by lightning. However, Yang Chun only rushed down with excitement and saw a scene that made him heartbroken. Xiao Tian was already close to those giant dragon corpses, and facing these giant dragon corpses that should be regarded as his elders, Xiao Tian also seemed to have a little scruples and gently tapped on a giant dragon. Boom! As if this point of Xiao Tian was a signal, it triggered a series of changes. The corpses of those giant dragons, like the bones of ordinary people who have been weathered for countless years, instantly turned into powder. Before the powder fell to the ground, it was blown away by the wind that came out of nowhere. The body of the giant dragon disappeared so thoroughly that Yang Chen's extravagant hope of collecting a little powder fell through. People were still in the air, but Yang Chen's heart seemed to have been hollowed out by something, and he was heartbroken to death. Such a precious treasure disappeared so easily. making Yang Chun have an unreal feeling. I hope that the scene just now was just a dream, not a reality. Unfortunately, until Yang Chun fell to the ground, everything in front of him had not changed. What had happened, and it could no longer be changed. Perhaps these should not appear in the world at all. Yang Chun adjusted his mood in an instant. It was already a miracle that he could see this scene with his own eyes, so he didn't want too much. Worrying about gains and losses, that was not what a great principal golden immortal should do. Here, Xiao Tian seemed to be in heaven. Every breath contained a strong dragon aura. Xiao Tian was happy all over the world, and the happy mood was even transmitted to Yang Chun. After hovering in the air for a while, Xiao Tian seemed to feel something. He slowly flew to a position and stopped. After looking carefully for a while, he flew to Yang Chen's side. This time, Xiao Tian directly rolled up Yang Chun, then took him to that position, and then began to fly above. Yang Chun was very puzzled. Was there anything special here? After looking down and carefully observing, he found that there was a complete octagonal mark on the ground here. It was an imprint left by something, and even a groove was left on the ground. The groove was very shallow, but it was very clear. Just thinking about it a little, Yang Chun knew what to do. Since everything here was related to the Dragon Palace treasure house, then this must be no exception. The octagonal thing, except for the base of the dragon tower, there was nothing else. Quickly summoning the dragon pagoda from the medicine garden, Yang Chun found the octagonal traces and accurately placed the base of the dragon pagoda. This action was like a key to open a lock, completely activating all the arrangements here. All of a sudden, all the dragon aura in the entire space directly turned into a white mist visible to the naked eye and quickly condensed towards the dragon tower. The white mist gathered from all directions, and the dragon tower seemed to have infinite suction, completely absorbing these white dragon auras. After a while, there was no trace of dragon aura around, and all of it was absorbed by the dragon tower. Xiao Tian cheered and rushed directly into the dragon tower, and the door of the dragon tower was closed again. The entire interior of the dragon tower has been filled with white, thick liquid like dragon aura. Xiao Tian was in it. It was like being in heaven. As soon as the door of the dragon tower was closed, a beautiful palace group appeared out of thin air, and the dragon tower shone. The dragon tower seemed to be directly integrated into the palace group, becoming a complete set of buildings. It was described as magnificent, resplendent, and so on, and it seemed that it was not perfect enough to express the feeling of the palace. Even Yang Chun, who had seen the spectacular great principal golden immortal of the heavenly court, couldn't think of any appropriate words to describe it for a while. In the face of such a palace group, Yang Chun only felt one kind of emotion, that is, beauty and comfort. Chapter 838. Just looking at it, there was such a feeling. If he really lived in it, what kind of enjoyment would it be? The palace of the Jade Emperor was just like this, right? The luxury of the Dragon Clan was simply speechless. He didn't know how those guys in the heavenly court would feel if this scene was known by them. While admiring, Yang Chun suddenly found that his body was involuntarily flying to a certain place. The most incredible thing was that the flight turned out to be with his own strength. That is to say, unconsciously, he had been completely controlled by others. Soon Yang Chun noticed that it was not that he was being controlled, but there was an invisible request that he could not refuse. This time, Yang Chun was suddenly shocked. What kind of power could make him like this? So that although his heart was vigilant and shocked, his body did not resist the request of the other party. In the midst of the shock, Yang Chun had come to the edge of a square pool. Below was a pool of white liquid, exuding a burst of fragrance. Yang Chun's body was no longer under his own control at this moment, and he stepped into the pool. The moment he was soaked by the white liquid, Yang Chun suddenly understood everything completely. Just now it was Xiao Tian who directed him to walk into this pool. From entering the dragon tower and then the palace appeared, Xiao Tian, as a descendant of the dragon clan, controlled everything here. The dragon tower was the master hub that controlled everything, and Xiao Tian instantly understood all the arrangements here. The white liquid in this pool was the dragon yuan left by the dragon clan. This was a kind of body secretion unique to the dragon clan. For the dragon clan and the descendants of the dragon clan like Shao Tian, it did not have much effect, but it had indescribable benefits for human cultivators. The most obvious benefit was that as soon as Yang Chun entered it, it was as if he was contaminated with the aura of the dragon clan, and Shao Tian could no longer control Yang Chun. And Yang Chun also instantly understood all the thoughts of Shao Tian, even clearer than the spiritual connection between the main pet. In the past, Yang Chun could only command Shao Tian through his spiritual awareness. He could see everything Shao Tian saw through Shao Tian's eyes, but he could not clearly feel Shao Tian's emotions. Now, Yang Chun seemed to know Shao Tian's mind easily. Once this kind of dragon essence was contaminated by other races, it would quickly disappear in a short period of time. The opportunity was rare. Yang Chun did not care to communicate with Shao Tian and quickly began to cultivate in the dragon essence pool. Dragon essence had a strong amplification effect on all the cultivation techniques that Yang Chun cultivated. Cultivating in the dragon essence was 100 times faster than cultivating on ordinary spirit veins. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Yang Chun would definitely not miss it. He simply began to cultivate the cultivation methods that he was currently cultivating. At present, Yang Chun's most powerful cultivation method was the Three Purities Secret Art. This spiritual awareness cultivation method, which was directly passed down from the Taishang Lao Jun, has not been improved after entering the third layer. Twice in a row, it was about to enter the realm of spiritual awareness splitting. It was resolved by Yang Chun using the supreme mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra and Gaoyu Gong Suanling's dual cultivation. At this realm, the division of the spiritual awareness did not have much benefit for Yang Chun. But at this moment, the dragon essence was really rare, and he couldn't care about that much. As soon as the Three Purities Secret Art began to be cultivated, Yang Chun felt the powerful amplification effect of the dragon essence. Even the Three Purities Secret Art, which had been stuck in the third layer for a long time, after just cultivating for a while, it was faintly on the verge of a breakthrough. The crazy improvement of the spiritual awareness, the speed of improvement, made Yang Chun feel afraid. The peak middle Deshang stage, the late Deshang stage, the peak late Deshang stage, the peak Deshang stage, the peak Deshang stage, the peak Deshang stage. Until the human immortal first grade, it stopped. The crazy skyrocketing spiritual awareness directly allowed Yang Chun to cross the limit of the Deshang stage and enter the realm of the human immortal first grade that could only be reached after ascending to the spiritual world. In this world, no one dared to say that their spiritual awareness was stronger than Yang Chun's. The strange thing was that in this crazy improvement, Yang Chun's spiritual awareness did not show any signs of splitting, which made Yang Chun satisfied. However, this was not the most satisfactory place for Yang Chun. What made Yang Chun most satisfied was that the Three Purities Secret Art had been upgraded to the fourth layer. Unexpectedly, without the splitting of the spiritual awareness, it was upgraded to the fourth layer. The fourth layer of the Three Purities Secret Art. That was a completely different concept. Not to mention the growth speed of the spiritual awareness. Not to mention the degree of conciseness. At the fourth layer, the spiritual awareness could be released to hurt people. This was not a simple hypnosis or spiritual awareness shock, but it could directly harm the other's spiritual awareness. However, Yang Chun's spiritual awareness had finally reached the edge of splitting. As long as it was improved a little, it would have to split and form a second primordial spirit. His sea of consciousness had undergone earth-shaking changes. The biggest change was the addition of a white dragon. The dragon possessed a very powerful pressure of the dragon clan. When it was slightly released, it could make people have a feeling of having to look up to it. It was as if they were facing a peerless expert and felt ashamed of their inferiority. It was completely different from the killing intent of the Bloody River. The killing intent could make people collapse, but Long Way could make people feel humble and even dare not to be enemies at all. Although this Long Way was not as strong as the killing intent, which made people bow their heads and worship it, He already had the white dragon, which was equivalent to planting the seed of Long Wei, and there would be unlimited growth possibilities in the future. The white dragon crawled on top of the long river of blood, covering all the blood in the river. And the external temperament of Yang Chun himself seemed to have undergone earth-shaking changes. Originally, when Yang Chun was angry, his killing intent was monstrous, and the timid people would directly be scared to collapse. But now Yang Chun was angry, but with a vast majesty of despising all living beings. Others would involuntarily be affected, and the momentum would naturally be weaker. Even if it was a strong enemy, if the momentum was weak, the combat effectiveness would naturally be reduced a bit. Basically, as long as Yang Chun could master the Long Way and the killing intent, he was already in an invincible position. Of course, this was just a superficial phenomenon. If Yang Chun really wanted to kill people, if he really wanted to use the bloody river, he would not be affected in any way. It was just up to Yang Chun to choose between the monstrous killing intent and the vast Long Way. The frequent use of the killing intent would make people think of it as an evil spirit, and then eliminate it to defend the Tao. But the Long Way would only make people convinced, which would only bring more benefits to Yang Chun. In addition, his sea of consciousness had directly expanded more than 3 times, reaching a radius of 2,000 acres. The degree of conciseness had reached a jaw-dropping level. Not to mention anything else, in this world, no one could make Yang Chun's sea of consciousness hurt, even if it was the master who had passed the wind tribulation and was about to ascend. After the cultivation of the 3 purities secret art, Yang Chun immediately turned to the yellow turban strongman body refining technique. Chapter 839. Originally, the yellow turban strongman body refining technique was already at the peak of the mountain picking strength, and it would soon enter the next realm of the river turning strength. Under the effect of the Dragon Yuan, the body refining technique directly absorbed almost half of the Dragon Yuan into Yang Chun's body and began to temper Yang Chun's body with the power of the Dragon Yuan. Under the effect of the yellow turban strongman body refining technique, Yang Chun's body shape began to change significantly again. His originally strong and sturdy body began to shrink as if he was deflating air. However, Yang Chun's physical strength was getting stronger and stronger with the change of the body. A casual punch, even if you don't use spiritual power, just the physical strength, the master of the peak Yuanying stage can't bear it with all his strength. Once you add spiritual power, you don't need to say much. The word river turning strength can clearly explain many problems. The figure has gradually recovered to the original height, although it has not been fully restored, but the word strong has been completely missed. It's just a little bigger than when he didn't cultivate, and he looks a little more sturdy, but he is no longer a freak in the eyes of others. The pure body's defensive power has been completely improved by a big level. The flying sword of the ordinary foundation, stage, Jidan stage, cultivator can't pierce the skin of Yang Chun at all. Without the golden bell, Yang Chun could also resist ordinary injuries. Being able to cultivate the yellow turban strongman body refining technique to the realm of the river turning strength in the mortal world, Yang Chun is fully confident that after arriving in the spiritual world, he will be able to cultivate the body refining technique to the Deshang realm. This is something that has never happened since ancient times, even in the heavenly court. Yang Chun doesn't even know how powerful it will be after reaching that realm. The most difficult cultivation of the 3 purities secret art and the yellow turban strongman body refining technique have been upgraded by a realm, and there is not much Dragon Yuan left. Yang Chun seized the time and cultivated the Yin Yang 5 elements secret art once. With the stimulation of the Dragon Yuan, the growth rate of the Yin Yang 5 elements secret art was stunning. Yang Chun, who was reborn as an almighty immortal, never lacked the state of mind. However, while improving his spiritual power step by step, he also needed to improve the quality of his spiritual power. While retaining the quality of spiritual power, Yang Chun can also synchronize with geniuses like Gao Yu and Gong Sunling, which is not easy. Cultivating 10 kinds of spiritual power at the same time, the yin and yang and the five elements mutually generated the new spiritual power, but still needed to go through a process of refining the spiritual power of the yin and yang, and the five elements mutually restrained each other before it could be considered as the spiritual power that Yang Chun could accept. In terms of the quality of spiritual power, Yang Chun was many times better than people of the same cultivation level. This was also the reason why Yang Chun was only in the early Jidan stage. But the sky-measuring ruler marked a value of more than 3,000 degrees, directly comparable to the masters of the Yuanying stage. But now, with the help of the dragon essence, the growth rate of the dragon power had reached an unbelievable level. The dragon essence dissipated quickly, but it was not a short time. It took a month for the three purities secret art and the yellow turban strongman body refining technique, and 3 months for the yin-yang five elements secret art. Later, the dragon yuan became less and less, and at the same time, the efficiency of using the dragon yuan was slowly everywhere. However, even so, Yang Chun was still very satisfied. In 3 months, Yang Chun's cultivation base was directly raised from the middle Jidan stage to the late Jidan stage. Even if Yang Chun was well informed, he was shocked by this crazy speed. Fortunately, the dragon yuan produced by the dragon clan has only been so little for thousands of years, and it will begin to dissipate and disappear when it encounters a cultivator other than the dragon clan. Otherwise, the dragon clan would have to stay in the mortal world. How many masters could they quickly create? With the help of the dragon yuan, in 4 months of cultivation, Yang Chen's 3 purities secret art and the yellow turban strongman body refining technique were promoted by a big realm, and even his spiritual power cultivation base was promoted by a small realm. These 4 months were already equivalent to the effect of 100 years of cultivation under normal circumstances. The promotion of spiritual power to 10 was secondary. The key was the 3 purities secret art and the yellow turban strongman body refining technique. These 2 most difficult cultivation methods were the most profitable. Coming here was really worth it. Although there were dangers, the benefits were enough to make anyone who knew jealous. Of course, Yang Chen would not make such a mistake and tell others. That was a fool's behavior. In fact, Xiao Tian was the one with the biggest harvest. As a descendant of the dragon clan, not only did he sweep away the dragon chi here, but he also got the control of the dragon palace. The most important thing was that he got the complete inheritance of the dragon clan, which was incomparable to any substantial benefit. If it weren't for Yang Chen's cultivation in the Dragon Yuan pool, Xiao Tian could even leave here. As a descendant of the Dragon Clan, the speed of accepting benefits was much faster than Yang Chen. After getting the inheritance of the Dragon Clan, Xiao Tian was very generous and gave all the palaces to Yang Chen, leaving only the Dragon Tower for himself. Under the control of Xiao Tian, the palace group of the Dragon Palace directly became a small model that could be placed in the palm of his hand and was received by Yang Chen into the merit ring. You must know that this was the Dragon Palace. Not to mention anything else, the efficiency of cultivation inside was definitely many times better than outside. At the same time, Yang Chen also had a plan to refine the shuttle from the Dragon Clan. If possible, plus the Golden Bell, it would become a super magic weapon with excellent defense and fast speed at the Grotto Heaven level. Basically, apart from these, there were not many things left in the original Dragon Palace. A formation to collect the 10th water true essence. A formation to protect the Dragon Palace, to form a whirlpool in the sea of no return, and the powerful slate that carried the formation. For the sake of Xiao Tian's face, Yang Chen would not move these things. Anyway, the good things were in the Dragon Palace. When the time came, he would look for them slowly. There was no need to uproot the Dragon Palace. This trip to explore the sea of no return, the harvest was far beyond Yang Chen's imagination. Just inside the sea of no return, he stayed for a year and 5 months. Gong Sunling and Ho Yun must have been waiting anxiously on the periphery of the sea of no return. Yang Chen was afraid that they would come to look for him regardless of the danger, which would be self-defeating, and he would be in danger for no reason. Fortunately, when they separated, he had already said that the time would not be too short. He hoped that Gong Sunling would not worry too much. After collecting the Dragon Palace, Xiao Tian launched the formation, returned to the teleportation array, and took the crystal ball from the pit. Yang Chun found that there was still half of the monster power crystal left by Lan Ning. It could still be used in the ocean, which was a small surprise. The top priority now was to quickly rendezvous with Gong Sunling and Ho Yun, and then quickly rush back to the Central Plains Dao Sex. This time, Yang Chun used the power of the Dragon Yuan to desperately improve the realm of the three purity secret art. His spiritual awareness was already on the verge of splitting. Both Gao Yu and Yang Chun have already had double cultivation with Yang Chun, and they have also shared a lot of Yang Chun's spiritual awareness. Double cultivation will not share much for Yang Chun. Yang Chun needs to consider whether to find Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan, his two nominal fiancés, to practice the highest mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra together. Chapter 840. It was much easier to get out of the Dragon Palace. At least now, Xiao Tian could almost completely control everything here. After returning from the original road to the formation slate, the five-element hook directly extended several times in Yang Chen's hand and hooked the top 5 buckles. The huge suction could not compete with the power of the five-element hook, and Yang Chun easily returned to the hole. At this moment, the powerful suction and endless whirlpool of the sea of no return seemed to have no effect on Xiao Tian at all, and for Yang Chun, who has just been promoted to the realm of the Yellow Turban Strongman, although there were still some obstacles, it was no longer so involuntary. Soon, Yang Chun took the shuttle away from the core area of the sea of no return and began to fly to the periphery. The spiritual awareness that has reached the realm of the human immortal first grade swept unscrupulously in this sea area. Even without the use of the demon power crystal of Lan Ning, no sea beast dared to get a little closer. While enjoying this powerful feeling of transcending the limits of this mortal world, Yang Chun suddenly discovered that in a certain direction outside the sea of no return, there are dozens of masters. Sun Chun was a master of the Yuanying stage in Taishimen. He was also the link between Taishimen and Yu Winnie in the Hidden Dragon Cave. In terms of cultivation base, he and Yu Winnie of the Hidden Dragon Cave were on the same level, and even the two had competed several times in private. They were evenly matched, and no one could do anything to the other. More than a year ago, Sun Chun suddenly received news from the South China Sea that the Hidden Dragon Cave was uprooted and almost wiped out. What was left were only a few lucky fish and shrimp that were not in the Hidden Dragon Cave at the time, and even the rogue cultivators who didn't know the true identity of Yu Winnie. This news surprised Sun Chun. Although the sect did not have a lot of people in the South China Sea, there were more than a dozen Yuanying stage masters. Especially the Yuanying stage septuplets, relying on a set of 7-star sword formation, they could almost compete with the masters of the early Deshang stage. Such combat power was actually uprooted. The news was sent by Sun Chun, who secretly left a rogue cultivator to monitor the Hidden Dragon Cave. He couldn't lie, and this was not the betrayal of the Hidden Dragon Cave, but it was eradicated. There was no need to lie at all. Among the murderers who pulled out the Hidden Dragon Cave, Sun Chun heard the name of Yang Chun. At first, he thought that it was a coincidence that they shared the same name, but with the addition of the Wanbao Tower, it was confirmed that it was Yang Chun of Chunyang Palace. How could Yang Chun appear in the South China Sea and even capture all the masters of the Hidden Dragon Cave? How'd he do it? No one knew why Yang Chun would make a move. Although the South China Sea is far away, Taishimen did not plan to control it in the palm of their hands in a short period of time, but they also planned for hundreds of years. Originally, they thought that the slow grinding of Yuan Yi's blunt knife could also make the South China Sea alliance invisible, but they did not expect hundreds of years of hard work to turn into a bubble. It was related to Yang Chun again, and the Taishimen's high-level officials were already a little angry. This guy is like a ghost. He seems to know how to bring trouble to Taishimen all day long. 99% of the high-level officials hope that Yang Chun can die a violent death. However, now Yang Chun can't die. According to the news from the Green Jade, Immortal Island, and the Blue Cloud sect, The three injured Deshang stage elders of their two sect have recovered from their injuries under the 5th-grade medicinal pills refined by Yangchen. Even more than that, after experiencing the torture of this injury, the three masters have been greatly tempered in their state of mind, and their cultivation base has risen instead of falling. On the other hand, on the Taishaman side, the injuries of the three Deshang stage elders became more and more serious, and even there were signs of being unable to suppress it. The medicinal pills refined by several alchemy masters could stop the injuries of the three elders from worsening. As for recovery, it was impossible at all. In this case, how could the Taishaman let Yangchen die? Yangchen was now a little guy. Although he was a 5th-grade alchemy master, but he only had disagreements with the Taishaman on the matter of Li Qingchen, and even later helped the Taishaman very generously in the interpretation of the secret key. The reason why the Taishaman wanted Yangchen to die was only because Yangchen was not in their hands, and his achievements were somewhat outstanding, but it was not a life-and-death enemy. From the perspective of the Taishaman, they were far from knowing the harm that Yangchen had done to them, and there was no such deep-seated hatred. On one side were their own three masters of the Deshang stage. On the other side, the control of a second-rate sect was not successful. Weighing the two sides, it was natural to preserve the combat effectiveness of the masters of the Deshang stage. Now the Taishaman had already suffered huge losses. If they lost these three masters, their strength would go down another level. The meaning of the sect was to let Sun Chun come over to investigate what happened. If possible, it would be best to repair it with Yangchen. Of course, the best result was to control Yangchen. To this end, Sun Chun was even allowed to bring 20 Yuanying stage masters. He strived to be stronger than the hidden dragon cave that was destroyed. Along the way, Sun Chun was also careful not to expose his strength. He took a space magic weapon, put the others in the magic weapon, and quickly rushed to the South China Sea. After arriving in the South China Sea, he immediately knew what happened. The people in the hidden dragon cave were greedy for property. Without figuring out the true background of the Wanbao Tower, they rashly made a move, which annoyed Yangchen. Yangchen brought 11 Yuanying stage masters and a person whose depth could not be seen, who should be in the Deshang stage, and uprooted the hidden dragon cave. This matter was very big in the South China Sea, and Yangchen did not conceal it all. Even at the last moment, Yu Winnie's tribulation was not concealed. Sun Chun didn't waste much effort to know what had happened. As soon as he heard the appearance of the master who could not see the depth, Sun Chun knew that it was Gui Shanyu of the Chunyang Palace. He was powerful, not to mention Yu Winnie, who had just been promoted to the Deshang stage. Even if it was a master who had been promoted for 100 years, he was not necessarily the opponent of the old guy. Yangchen brought Gui Shanyu to the scene, and the hidden dragon cave was not at all destroyed. The other 10 could basically be matched with the masters of the Hall of Eccentrics who joined the Chunyang Palace in recent years. Only Ho Yun was a stranger. What made Sun Chun happy was that when he left Taishaman, the old tree demon Gui Shanyu had returned to the Chunyang Palace with 10 Yuanying stage masters. Only Yang Chun, Gong Sunling, and the mysterious Ho Yun did not know their whereabouts. He said he didn't know, but for others, Sun Chun had a compass in his hand, but he could easily find the direction of Yangchen. According to the location he was looking for, Yangchen was still in the South China Sea, and he went to a famous dangerous place in the South China Sea, the Sea of No Return. Although he didn't know what Yangchen was doing, one thing was certain: Yangchen was still alive. Chapter 841. The most critical point was that there was no Gui Shanyu around Yangchen, only Gong Sunling and Ho Yin. Ho Yin was said to be a master of the peak Yuanying stage, but this was not important. What was important was that there were no top masters of Chunyang Palace around Yangchen now, and the South China Sea was far away from the emperor. Even if they did something, Chunyang Palace would not know who did it. In the past, there were 6 Yuanying stage masters who intercepted Yangchen and were killed instantly, but everyone suspected that the old tree demon had been following Yangchen. Otherwise, with Yangchen's ability, it was impossible to do this. Now Gui Shanyu was determined to be in Chunyang Palace, which was at least a year's journey from the Sea of No Return. Even if he had wings, he could not fly over. Sun Chun, on the other hand, brought 20 Yuanying stage masters. There were 4 peak Yuanying stage masters with the same cultivation base as him. It was more than enough to kill the unknown Ho Yun. As for Gong Sunling, a junior in the middle Jidan stage, as long as any Yuanying stage master came out, they could capture her easily. It just so happened that Gong Sunling was still one of Yang Chen's wives. With her as a hostage, wouldn't Yang Chen be obediently manipulated? This time, Sun Chun felt that he was so lucky that he could encounter such a good thing. Not to mention how many benefits he could get from Yang Chen, a 5th-grade alchemist master. By capturing Yang Chen, the Taishaman alone could be exchanged for a coveted reward. If Sun Chun didn't seize this heaven-sent opportunity, wouldn't he be going against the heavens? So after getting the whereabouts of Yang Chen, Sun Chun immediately began to make arrangements. Of course, Sun Chun was not a reckless person. He must first understand the situation. What was the situation in the Sea of No Return? He soon learned from a group of rogue cultivators. After everything was figured out, Sun Chun took 20 Yuanying stage masters, circled around, and went straight to the Sea of No Return. Until the periphery of the Sea of No Return, Yang Chen's position had not changed, which made Sun Chun very happy. At least he didn't have to worry about Yang Chen leaving. To catch Yang Chen, the most troublesome thing was that Yang Chen had a flight-type weapon. Once Yang Chen starts, Sun Chun will not be able to catch up. Fortunately, in the past, Taishaman had a way to deal with Yang Chen. In Sun Chun's hands, he knew a simple way that could be realized here. Last time, they had used the fast boat of the Taishaman, but they had failed on the verge of success. Now that there was no magic weapon that could compete with the shuttle, he naturally had to start from another direction. Of course, the simplest way is to make Yang Chen unable to use the shuttle. At this moment, Sun Chun has such a way. A spirit sealing formation. Once you enter the formation, no matter who it is, the spiritual power of the body will be firmly sealed, unless it is a master of the Deshang stage. There may be a way to get rid of it. Obviously, Yang Chen did not have such a cultivation. This formation was very powerful, but the shortcomings were equally obvious. Once the formation was launched, the enemy's spiritual power entering the formation would be sealed, but in the same way, the master of the formation would not be able to operate his spiritual power. But Sun Chun didn't care about this. As long as he entered the formation, plus his 21 Yuanying stage masters, without spiritual power, couldn't he catch a middle Jidan stage master who also had no spiritual power? Are you kidding me? The body of a Yuanying stage master who has been baptized by thunder tribulation was by no means what those little guys in the Jidan stage could imagine. The only drawback was that the activation of this formation required a lot of masters, and the time to arrange it was not short. The enemy would not be stupid enough to rush into the formation. Once the clues were seen, they would be bound to return without success. But as long as the arrangement was completed, with a few Yuanying stage masters fully mobilizing their spiritual power, it would be difficult for a master of the Deshang stage to escape. But with the compass that grasped the whereabouts of Yang Chen, things were much simpler. This method could be used before, but at that time, everyone did not think that 6 Yuanying stage masters could not catch Yang Chen. Now Sun Chun had such an opportunity purely by chance. When arranging the formation, Sun Chun was even surprised to find that Yang Chen seemed to be in the core part of the Sea of No Return. How did Yang Chen get in, and how was he safe and sound after entering? These were things that Sun Chun wanted to know even in his dreams. With this reason, Sun Chun's idea of capturing Yang Chen alive became more firm. There were countless good things on the edge of the Sea of No Return and countless powerful sea beasts. What was in the middle of the core was simply exciting. All this, as long as he caught Yang Chen, he could thoroughly know. While Sun Chun was constantly exploring the location of Yang Chen's formation, Yang Chen was cultivating in the Dragon Yuan and couldn't care about anything else. When Yang Chen came out of the Dragon Palace, he immediately noticed the tremor of the spiritual awareness mark in his body. The spiritual awareness mark was planted by Li Hung, the young master of the Taishaman sect. Yang Chen has no doubt about it. In recent years, Li Hung would be in a coma for no reason almost every once in a while, which was exactly the same time when Yang Chun threw the spiritual awareness mark into the blood river. He didn't expect to be able to retaliate against another enemy by accident. Yang Chun was of course happy, but he kept throwing the spiritual awareness mark into the blood river every once in a while. With Yang Chen's current human immortal first-grade spiritual awareness, he immediately discovered the movement on Sun Chun's side. Even the formation arranged by Sun Chun, Yang Chun saw it clearly and understood its role clearly. The other party used such a method to limit Yang Chen's escape. For a while, Yang Chun didn't know whether to laugh or feel sad for Sun Chun and his party. It was a very strange decision to seal the spiritual power and try to use the Yuanying stage body that had been baptized by Thunder Tribulation to defeat him. Not to mention that with the help of the Dragon Yuan, Yang Chun broke through the fourth layer of the Three Purities secret art. With the spiritual awareness of the human immortal first grade, it was hard to say whether this formation could trap Yang Chun. Yang Chun's cultivation of the yellow turban strongman body refining technique had reached the point of turning the river. If these people wanted to use physical strength to fight against it, it was simply seeking death. In the face of such a good thing, Yang Chun, of course, did not hesitate to follow the bridge section designed by Sun Chun and plunged into the formation that had been arranged for a long time, waiting for Yang Chun to throw himself into the trap. In order to judge Yang Chun's route, 5 of the 20 Yuanying stage masters had temporarily lost their combat effectiveness. The remaining 15 were all trying their best to maintain the operation of the formation. Sun Chun himself was standing in the center of the formation, quietly waiting for the arrival of Yang Chun. He believed that Yang Chun had already discovered the abnormality, but now that he had entered the formation, everything was too late. At this moment, Yang Chun was a beast trapped by the formation, waiting to be slaughtered. No matter which direction Yang Chun went, he, who had lost his spiritual power, would eventually be guided to the position where Sun Chun was located by the formation. Sun Chun, who was waiting at ease, even saw that Yang Chun was captured by himself, understood the secret of the Sea of No Return, understood the secret of Yang Chen's alchemy, the large reward issued by the sect, and joined the high-level situation of the sect. Chapter 842. Yang Chun, Grandmaster Yang. With your current realm of alchemy, there is no benefit in Chunyang Palace. Sun Chun faced Yang Chun and still intended to persuade him patiently. After all, an alchemist who is willing to join is far better than being forced to join. Join my Taishaman, you can get everything you want. When he first saw Yang Chun, Sun Chun was also shocked. If he didn't know that the spiritual awareness imprint would never be wrong, he might think that this was someone else. In his impression, the image of Yang Chun was a tall and powerful man. How did he suddenly become a normal person at this moment? However, this is not the focus of Sun Chun's concern. Many body refining techniques have similar changes, which is not surprising. As long as Sun Chun can be sure that the person in front of him is the 5th-grade alchemist, Master Yang Chun. Presumably, Yang Chun has found the abnormality, but Sun Chun doesn't care. What if he finds it? In this formation, unless it is someone who has a much higher realm than Sun Chun, he can't escape the shackles of the formation at all. Yang Chun is a small Jidan stage cultivator. It is not a problem for him to catch him. Just for this, Yang Chun looked around. 100 feet away, there were at least a dozen masters. Mobilizing such a large force, could it be that they wanted to kill him at all costs? Yang Chun needs to figure out this problem. After all, hiding in the dark and facing Taishaman directly are 2 completely different concepts and require different methods. Of course, we Taishaman are very sincere. Sun Chun saw that Yang Chen's expression was not very surprising, and his heart moved. Perhaps Yang Chen's mind has begun to waver, which is definitely a good phenomenon. As long as Yang Chun is willing to consider it, there will be a chance. What kind of sincerity? At this moment, Yang Chun was not in a hurry to start. With such a master who understands the internal affairs of Taishaman, he can ask something. As long as we Taishaman can do it, you can ask. Sun Chun's tone was unprecedented. This was not him being arrogant, nor was he overstepping his authority to make a decision for the sect master, but a 5th-grade alchemist, the only 5th-grade alchemist in the world, was worth paying such a price. If I don't agree, you'll kill me? Yang Chun pointed at the surrounding and asked calmly again. This formation can only trap people. It won't kill them. Sun Chun shook his head slightly and said sincerely, I just want to talk to you, Master Yang. I have no other intention. Of course, if Yang Chun did not agree, then this formation would become a formation to capture Yang Chun. However, Yang Chun now believed that these people did not intend to kill him. They only wanted to rope him in or capture him. You don't intend to kill me? Yang Chun suddenly laughed. If you let me join the Taishaman, would you let bygones be bygones? You don't intend to pursue the death of Li Qingchen? Li Qingchen is to blame. It's not your fault. Sun Chun was getting happier and happier. As long as Yang Chun was willing to ask these things, he would not worry that he would not be tempted. After all, Sun Chun also knew that the first sect that Yang Chun came to worship was the Taishaman, but he was thrown out without eyes. There was a heart for Taishaman, not to mention Li Qingchen. Even Li Qingchen's master, in order to win over Yang Chun at this moment, he would not hesitate to be betrayed. What about the 6 Yuanying stage masters? The smile on Yang Chen's face was very strange, and he looked at Sun Chun with a smile. Last time, the Taishaman used 6 Yuanying stage masters to intercept and kill Yang Chun, but they were killed by Yang Chun. Could the Taishaman let go of this kind of thing? Sun Chun really knew about the 6 Yuanying stage masters, but at this moment, he did not hesitate at all. He nodded directly and said, at that time, everyone's position was different. It was inevitable that there would be deaths and injuries. Even other people in the sect could figure it out. You don't have to worry about it. After a pause, Sun Chun seemed to want to reassure Yang Chun completely and added, moreover, everyone knows that with your strength alone, you definitely can't kill the 6 brothers. It's not your fault. Although you have the name of killing people, the Taishaman will never pursue this matter again. You can rest assured. In order to win over Yang Chun, even the lives of the 6 Yuanying stage masters who had died in Yang Chen's hands were no longer pursued. It must be said that the Taishaman had made a lot of capital this time. If it was a small sect, 6 Yuanying stage masters would almost be a disaster. The Greatest Heaven sect was a big family, and it was really extraordinary. Is it possible that Mister's trip is specifically for Yang Chun? Yang Chun also nodded when he listened, but the topic immediately turned to the purpose of Sun Chun's trip. Originally, it was just because of the destruction of the Hidden Dragon Cave. I happened to learn that the Master was here, and it was fate. Sun Chun was also a bachelor. In order to let Yang Chun completely rest assured, he even said the purpose of this trip, the destruction of the Hidden Dragon Cave this time, was caused by greed. It's your own fault. Master Yang, it's good for you to destroy it. The Hidden Dragon Cave is the arrangement of the Taishaman. Yang Chen's eyes tightened as he stared at Sun Chun and asked. The other party even told him this kind of thing. He must have prepared for the worst, either to recruit him or to capture him alive. If there is no way, it is to kill him. This kind of secret must never be leaked to outsiders. Exactly, this time I came to the South China Sea to rebuild a rogue cultivator alliance. Since Sun Chun has made up his mind, he is not afraid to tell Yang Chun. The Taishaman are determined to win the South China Sea. I think Master Yang can also see the spirit of our Taishaman. Not only in the South China Sea, but also in several other places, there are forces of our Taishaman. Looking at Yang Chen's slightly surprised eyes, Sun Chun became more and more excited. Others think that our Taishaman Mountain Gate was destroyed and suffered heavy losses, but the loss is only some reserved disciples. As long as time passes, in less than 100 years, our Taishaman will definitely be several times stronger than now. The world is big, and it is all in the center of our Taishaman. Master Yang, honest people don't beat around the bush. If you join our Taishaman, you can take whatever you want in the world. Sun Chun felt that there was enough to say. If Yang Chun was smart enough, he should have made a decision. At the moment, he no longer talked nonsense and directly asked Yang Chun to give a reply. I don't know what Master Yang thinks. Mister is here to rebuild a rogue cultivator alliance to replace the Hidden Dragon Cave. Is that right? Yang Chun did not give a direct answer, but asked a seemingly irrelevant question. Exactly. Sun Chun did not hide it. If Yang Chun didn't want to die now, he could only accept Sun Chun's manipulation. That's good. Yang Chen's face suddenly showed a smile. For at least a few decades, the Taishaman probably won't care about you, right? Chapter 843. Just when Sun Chun was still wondering what Yang Chen meant, Yang Chen's figure had already begun to act. His goal was not Sun Chun, who was facing him, but the 15 masters around him who were already within 20 feet of him. Under the speed at which all the people were stunned, Yang Chen directly faced the one who was the farthest away from him. Without saying anything, he just punched out. When the formation was set up, these masters knew what would happen, so they had already called out the flying sword and held it in their hands. As soon as the formation was activated, the spiritual power was sealed, and the Chinquan bag could not be used, let alone the life source flying sword, which was sealed in the body and could not be taken out. As for using the sword to hurt people, it was even more impossible. There was no other way except to hold it in the hand and use it. Seeing Yang Chen's punch coming, the other party was a Yuanying stage master with rich combat experience. He was not afraid at all and waved his sword to block. Fortunately, he still didn't want to hurt Yang Chen, only using the ridge of the sword. He wanted to stop Yang Chen's punch and then easily control it. Including Sun Chun, no one felt that there would be any accidents. Originally, the formation was to deal with 3 people, but now there was only Yang Chen, not to mention 21 against 1. Even if it was 1 against 1, it would be easy. How can anyone guard against it? Dang, there was a loud noise. The Yuanying stage master holding the sword shook violently in his hand, and he could no longer hold the hilt of the sword. The flying sword flew out of his hand, and he didn't know where it fell. But Yang Chen's fist momentum did not stop at all. He still punched over and hit the opponent's chest solidly. The Yuanying stage master couldn't avoid it all. He was hit by a punch, and before he could say anything, he fainted and became unconscious. Yang Chen did not stop at all. He turned around and rushed to another person. At this time, no one dared to underestimate the enemy. All of them were protecting themselves as if they were facing a formidable enemy. A few who were close even gathered together and formed 1 or 2 teams, intending to fight against Yang Chen separately. Who would have thought that Yang Chen, who had his spiritual power sealed, could still be so fierce? Needless to say, it must be a problem with the change in body shape. A certain body refining technique had reached a certain realm, and this kind of situation appeared. Unfortunately, he broke through at this moment. But in any case, if 15 against 1 still couldn't take down Yang Chen, all the Yuanying stage masters present should kill themselves. Sun Chun's face was black, and he waved at several fellow apprentices around him, and everyone swarmed up. This Yang Chen doesn't know what's good for him. He still wants to get lucky in this situation. He just asked Sun Chun the purpose of coming here. Was it to catch them all in one fell swoop? The enraged Taishaman rushed forward almost crazily. A little Jidon middle stage dared to be so presumptuous. Could it be that by relying on some unknown body-refining technique, he dared to be so rampant? In an instant, at least 8 people rushed to Yang Chen's side, and at least 5 swords slashed on Yang Chen's body. Fortunately, these people did not forget to capture Yang Chen alive in their rage. They cut the limbs, but there were no fatal parts. However, the next scene in front of them was simply frightening. 5 flying swords slashed on Yang Chen's body, but they only scratched Yang Chen's clothes. When the blades reached his body, they felt a shock force, and the 5 flying swords that were slashed down bounced up violently, and the part that the blades cut did not even leave a white mark. What was this? Without spiritual power, it was impossible to use magic weapons, but what kind of cultivation method could make the flying sword bounce back? It must be known that this was not an ordinary sword, but everyone's life source flying sword. It was by no means something like the Golden Bell shield and Iron Cloth shirt could block. In a flash, Yang Chen did not dodge a few swords, but his fists blasted out mercilessly. A few punches in a row, all fell on the opponent's chest, and the strength used was just right. The 7 Yuanying stage masters around him couldn't even take a punch, and all of them fainted. In this spiritual power sealing formation, Yang Chen's yellow turban strongman body refining technique was simply like a fish in the water. It must be known that when this immortal secret art was cultivated to the 5th layer, it could compete with those great principal golden immortals. Although Yang Chen was now only in the 3rd layer, it was absolutely more than enough to crush a few Yuanying stage masters in the mortal world. What's more, these enemies also sealed their spiritual power. Yang Chen had seen fools, but he had never seen such a fool. Without asking, he also knew that this was because he was afraid that his shuttle would be too fast to catch up, but this method of self-abolishing martial arts was still too strange, so that Yang Chen couldn't help but want to wake up from his sleep. Taking the initiative to send 21 Yuanying stage masters for him to kill, this was really a big move by Taishiman. Thinking about it, Sun Chun shouldn't have looked for his own trouble, but he happened to think that he was easy to bully. At this moment, everyone had gathered. Within the scope of this formation, no one was the opponent of Yang Chen in terms of speed. In terms of strength, it was a world of difference. In less than a moment, the remaining Yuanying stage masters, except for Sun Chun, were all knocked down by Yang Chen with his fists, and none of them escaped. You? Sun Chun originally wanted to help his fellow apprentices fight, but he didn't expect things to happen so fast. When he rushed to Yang Chen's side, there was no one standing around. At this moment, Sun Chun's eyes seemed to spurt out flames. Yang Chen, this guy, actually talked so much with him, and now he was despicably knocking down all his fellow apprentices. This was simply slapping himself in the face. How could Sun Chun bear it? The flying sword in his hand was unfolded, and he slashed towards Yang Chen's throat. At this moment, Sun Chun's mind had no plan to capture Yang Chen alive. If he didn't kill Yang Chen, once the matter of the hidden dragon cave was spread, Taishiman would definitely become the target of public criticism. In any case, Sun Chun would kill Yang Chen on the spot. Before he started, Sun Chun had already crushed the jade amulet controlled by the formation. As long as it was within 10 breaths, the spiritual power sealing formation would fail. Those fellow apprentices were knocked down by Yang Chen before they could even wait for their spiritual power to recover. However, this also gave Sun Chun a lot of time. With his peak Yuanying stage strength, it was absolutely easy to deal with Yang Chen in the middle Jidan stage. Suddenly, Sun Chun felt that his body was light, and the feeling of his spiritual power being bound disappeared without a trace. Sun Chun's face suddenly became happy, and the flying sword in his hand was like a dragon entering the sea. Flying up, and in a flash, it cut between Yang Chen's neck. Before Sun Chun saw the result, his ankles suddenly tightened, as if he was lifted by something. Then, with a few bangs, Sun Chun's figure flew up and down, and he was hit several times on the platform base of the original formation. His whole body was hit by this fall, and his whole body was in severe pain. He didn't know how many bones were broken. Chapter 844. In the eyes of outsiders, at this moment, Sun Chun, who was at the peak Yuanying stage, was grabbed by Yang Chen's ankle and then swung in the air and smashed around. He had the strength of the peak Yuanying stage, but Sun Chun could not break away from Yang Chen's big hand that grabbed his ankle. The strength of Yang Chen's grip almost broke his ankle. Under the severe pain, coupled with the sudden involuntary fall, how could he care about other things? The high and mighty peak Yuanying stage had never tasted such a frustrating taste. Just a few back-and-forth smashes made Sun Chun's body protection, spiritual power, no longer work. His bones were almost broken in half, and the spiritual power of his whole body was also scattered by Yang Chen's high-speed technique. In a moment, Sun Chun, who thought that the victory was in hand, changed from a high-spirited peak Yuanying stage ancestor to a dying, seriously injured and dying person. Lying helplessly on the ground, Sun Chun couldn't even move a finger at will. In his life, he had fought countless battles, but he had never been so miserable, which made him feel that it was better to die. But Yang Chen left his life, not only his life, but even the lives of 20 other Yuanying stage masters. Yang Chen did not collect them. All of them were still alive. This was not that Yang Chen suddenly became soft-hearted, but after knowing the purpose of Sun Chun's coming to the South China Sea, he deliberately showed mercy. Now that Sun Chun and the others were killed, the Taishamen must know that they would not only replan the South China Sea, but also strengthen their killing intent against Yangchun. But keeping their lives was different. They originally came here to establish a rogue cultivator alliance, and it was estimated that they would not be able to rush back to the General Alliance for decades, or even hundreds of years. Then during this period of time, the Taishamen in the South China Sea is equivalent to having no power at all. As long as the South China Sea alliance develops faster, the Taishamen will have no chance to intervene in the future. Secondly, if these people are not killed, the Taishamen will not launch their final means against himself and Chunyang Palace in the short term. Although the Chunyang Palace had grown a lot, it still couldn't compete with the Taishamen. He still needed Yang Chan to think of ways to weaken the Taishamen for a long time. In addition, these 21 Yuanying stage masters were definitely the best tonic for Gong Sunling's Mountain River geographical map. With more than 20 experts from the Orthodox Taoism, it would definitely shorten the time for Gong Sunling to refine the geographical map of mountains and rivers. Weakening the enemy's strength on one hand and strengthening his own strength on the other was Yang Chen's favorite thing to do. Moreover, Gong Sunling was his wife. It was only right and proper for a husband to help his wife. After putting away the 21 Yuanying, Yang Chun did not let go of the materials used for setting up the formation. He plundered them all into his Chinquan bag, and then began to look for the whereabouts of Ho Yun and Gong Sunling. In the area of the Sea of No Return, Yang Chun drove the shuttle for less than half a month and found Ho Yun and Gong Sunling on the periphery. It was said to be on the periphery, but in fact the two had already gone a lot deeper. During the time when Yang Chun entered the Sea of No Return, Ho Yun and Gong Sunling were looking for those powerful sea beasts on the periphery. Meeting Ho Yun, the sea beasts in this sea area were pitiful and unlucky. This guy who had been depressed in the Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's cave for tens of thousands of years was simply a battle maniac. When he encountered a sea beast, regardless of anything, he would rush up and fight. The general sea beasts really couldn't be seen in Ho Yun's eyes. He only chose those with strong combat power. However, even so, those sea beasts who were born to cultivate had no way to deal with Ho Yun, who had cultivated the transformation secret art and the yellow turban strongman body refining technique, and also the water attribute Ho Yun. Not to mention the Deshang stage cultivation base, plus natural divine power, plus the yellow turban strongman body refining technique. Not to mention the sea beasts in the mortal world. Even if it was the blue shadow that had already ascended, it was estimated that he could fight. Countless powerful sea beasts became the target of Ho Yun's practice one by one. When they were almost ravaged by Ho Yun, they were thrown into the Mountain River geographical map of Gong Sunling and became the slaves of the Mountain River geographical map, helping Gong Sunling to refine it. In this circle, the sea beasts that could be called powerful in the periphery were all defeated. Except for some unruly and powerful guys who were killed by Ho Yun, all the others were collected by Gong Sunling. On the periphery of the entire Sea of No Return, there were no sea beasts above the Yuanying stage. Of course, Ho Yun was not satisfied, so, under Ho Yun's careful protection, the two began to move forward into the interior of the Sea of No Return for a short time. The sea beasts here were more powerful, and there were even Deshang stage masters. Here, Ho Yun could be considered to be truly satisfied, fighting with the Deshang stage sea beasts in the sea. Even if it was as powerful as Ho Yun, he could not guarantee that he could win every time. Every battle was very hard, but it also made Ho Yun really go all out from the body to the heart. It was very comfortable. In the battle of the Deshang stage, Gong Sunling became superfluous. However, this did not mean that Gong Sunling was not safe. After collecting many Yuanying stage masters of the sea race, the Mountain River geographical map has inspired a new use. It may not be used to attack the enemy, but it was more than enough to protect Gong Sunling. With less worries, Ho Yun was more and more presumptuous, provoking strong enemies everywhere. In just over a year, he was fighting almost every day, and the strength of his battle intent was unprecedented. In Ho Yun's cultivation state of mind, in this more than a year of nonstop fighting, was improving more and more, gradually reaching the edge of the late stage, only one step away from the peak Deshang stage. Yang Chen's shuttle appeared behind Gong Sunling, and Gong Sunling noticed the arrival of Yang Chun almost instantly. At the moment when Yang Chun put away the shuttle, Gong Sunling had already rushed into Yang Chen's arms. It seemed that the two had a silent, tacit understanding. There was no need to say anything at all. They had a tacit understanding. Ho Yin was still fighting. His opponent was a huge tuna in the sea. It was as fast as electricity. Even the turbulent suction here in the sea of no return seemed to have no effect on it. The long-pointed beak was like a sharp spear, and it was evenly matched with Ho Yin. It was not known how long they had been fighting. Ho Yun's face, even its sweat beads, the terror of the opponent could be seen. However, Ho Yin was not a good person. The golden stick in his hands was powerful. The opponent was also in the Deshang stage, but he only dared to rely on speed to avoid. He did not dare to fight with Ho Yun face to face. Of course, the appearance of Yang Chun could not be hidden from Ho Yun. In the gap of the battle, Ho Yun had already seen Yang Chun and also saw the changes in Yang Chen's body, and his eyes suddenly lit up. However, Ho Yun suddenly discovered that he only saw Yang Chun with his eyes, and his spiritual awareness could not detect the whereabouts of Yang Chun at all, which was a shocking thing. Chapter 845. Ho Yun himself was a powerhouse of the Deshang stage, and after this period of fighting, his realm had been improved and he had reached the peak of the late Deshang stage. Compared with Luo Yuan in the past, he was even better. Under such circumstances, it was almost impossible for Yang Chun to escape the exploration of his spiritual awareness, unless he relied on a powerful magic weapon to hide his spiritual awareness. This magic weapon Yang Chun had before, but obviously Yang Chun did not use it now. Under normal circumstances, it seemed that there was only one possibility left that Ho Yun's spiritual awareness could be shielded. That was, Yang Chen's spiritual awareness cultivation base was far higher than Ho Yun, at least a realm higher than Ho Yun. The foundation stage could not detect the Jidan stage with spiritual awareness. The Jidan stage could not detect the Yuanying stage with spiritual awareness, and the Yuanying stage could not detect the Deshang stage with spiritual awareness. These were all because of the difference in realms. However, Ho Yun himself was already in the Deshang stage, and even he couldn't detect the realm with his spiritual awareness. What realm was that? Ho Yun couldn't help but be shocked. This thing was really unbelievable. With a feint, Ho Yun instantly broke out of the battle circle. Whether it was the body refining technique or the realm of spiritual awareness, Yang Chun was more interesting to Ho Yun than the sea beast of the Deshang stage. The sea beast also knew that Ho Yun was powerful. Seeing that Ho Yun took the initiative to break out of the battle circle, it did not pursue him. It just quietly dived into the sea and disappeared. This is the power of turning the river. Ho Yun came to Yang Chen's side and looked up and down at Yang Chen's body with an incredible look on his face. Ho Yun himself also received the teaching of Yang Chen's yellow turban strongman body refining technique. Of course, he understood that the changes in Yang Chen's body could only be achieved after cultivating to the third gravity river. However, the more he understood the yellow turban strongman body refining technique, the more he understood the difficulty of cultivating this body refining technique. According to Ho Yun's own estimation, if he wanted to cultivate to the third layer, it would be at least hundreds of years after ascending to the spiritual world. Yang Chun was now only more than 100 years old. Even without the thunder tribulation, it was easier for the body refining to succeed, but this cultivation speed was really a bit monstrous. Even Ho Yun, a real monstrous talent, was a little moved. Fight me. Looking at Yang Chen's body, Ho Yun's eyes lit up, and he couldn't help shooting out waves of battle intent. It was the mood of Ho Yun now. Yang Chen's river-turning strength even made Ho Yun forget that he was in the Deshang stage, and Yang Chun was only in the Jidan stage. He just wanted to have a good fight. You're not allowed to use your spiritual power. Gong Sunling, on the other hand, had absolute confidence in her husband, especially when Yang Chun had defeated Ho Yun in terms of experience on the shuttle. Now, Looking at the changes in Yang Chen's body shape, she naturally knew that her husband's cultivation was successful. How could she let her husband's reputation fall? Restricting spiritual power and only using physical strength would naturally make Ho Yun more convinced. Gong Sunling knew the origin of Ho Yun and knew that from the bottom of his heart, Ho Yun was not willing to join Chunyang Palace. But now Yang Chun had the opportunity to subdue Ho Yun and suppress his strength. Coupled with the gift of cultivation method, Ho Yun, who was full of fighting intent, may become a big help to Yang Chun. With the guidance of Yang Chun, Gong Sunling's mind was also flexible, and she thought of this in an instant. Yang Chen also had a tacit understanding, smiled at Gong Sunling, and then looked at Ho Yun with a smile. That's natural. Although Ho Yun was belligerent, he had not yet reached the point of suppressing people with his realm, especially when facing Yang Chun. He promised, and then immediately put on a fighting posture. Here, Yang Chen shook his head directly. Uncle Master, let's leave this sea and find a small island. After all, there was no place to set foot in the sea of no return. Without using spiritual power, it was impossible to fight at all. Ho Yun also realized this and immediately followed the advice. The golden stick was carried on his shoulder, and he was about to leave. How could Yang Chun let Ho Yun work hard? He immediately called out the shuttle, put the 3 people in it, and quickly left the sea. The infamous sea of no return has once again restored its calm on the surface. Except for the lack of a lot of fierce sea beasts on the periphery, there seems to be no other change. Maybe in a few years, there will be equally fierce sea beasts coming from other places. Maybe there will be some powerful monsters coming out of the sea of no return to occupy the territory. In any case, the sea of no return was still the sea of no return, and it was still the fierce place that made the rogue cultivators on the sea change their faces. In the shuttle, Yang Chun didn't say a word. He first threw out Sun Chun and other 21 Yuanying stage masters and briefly introduced them. Then he let Gong Sunling receive these Dao sect masters into the Mountain River geographical map. These days, Gong Sunling has collected no less than 100 Yuanying stage sea beasts, and even 2 Deshang stage sea beasts, all of which were captured by Ho Yun. Coupled with these Dao sect Yuanying stage masters, the Mountain River geographical map that originally needed to be tempered for hundreds of years could be tempered in, at most, another 10 years. At that time, Gong Sunling's combat effectiveness would definitely rise in a straight line. Even Shi Shanshan, who has cultivated more than Gong Sunling and Yang Chun for 100 years, may not be the opponent of Gong Sunling. These days, Ho Yun has been running around on the sea with Gong Sunling. There was no place to stand. He relied on his cultivation base to circle around the periphery of the sea of no return. When they got on the shuttle, both of them had a feeling of stepping on the ground. Yang Chun certainly understood that the 2 of them were tired, especially Ho Yun, who not only had to fight, but also had to take care of Gong Sunling and prevent Gong Sunling from getting injured, which was even harder. Not to mention anything else, just taking care of his wife, Yang Chun had to express his gratitude. At the moment, Yang Chun didn't say anything. 2 large cups of Jade Dragon wine, made by the 4 Seas mysterious coral liquid, one for Ho Yun and one for Gong Sunling. They had been fighting on the sea for more than a year, and they were physically and mentally exhausted. They just took the opportunity to sleep and recuperate. Gong Sunling drank the 4 Seas mysterious coral liquid. Of course, she understood her husband's painstaking efforts. Ho Yun believed in Yang Chun very much, drank it, and then fell directly to the ground, snoring loudly, as if he would not wake up even if the sky fell. Ho Yun was simply sent to one side to sleep, but Yang Chun carefully held Gong Sunling and sat on the side, holding Gong Sunling with one hand, taking out the jade gourd with the other hand, pouring himself a cup of Jade Dragon wine, and sipping it slowly. He just held Gong Sunling and let her sleep in his arms. The shuttle was on the bottom of the sea, flying fast, but it was directly on the way back to the Dao sections. The arrangement of the Taishamen in the South China Sea was destroyed, and the newly arrived Sun Chun and others were also captured. For at least a few decades, there would be no more black hands of the Taishamen in the South China Sea. Now, the most important thing for Yang Chun was to hurry back to the Tao Sex and cultivate the highest mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra with Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan to stabilize the spiritual awareness that suddenly increased because of the Dragon Yuan. Chapter 846. Gong Sunling has taken the 4 C's mysterious coral liquid many times. After waking up, the changes in her body were not very obvious. But Ho Yin was different. He took the 4 C's mysterious coral liquid for the first time, which made him feel embarrassed. Although Ho Yin was already a master of the Deshang stage, and at least experienced the baptism of the Thunder Tribulation and the Yin Fire Tribulation, the impurities in his body were still staggering. After a long sleep, Ho Yin woke up and immediately knew what happened to his body. In this regard, on the one hand, Ho Yin was very grateful to Yang Chun, but on the other hand, he was slightly annoyed. Ho Yun's embarrassment fell in the eyes of Gong Sunling. It seemed that this was a reason for Ho Yun to be very unhappy. For Gong Sunling, Ho Yun had a special feeling of care. After taking care of Gong Sunling for such a long time, Ho Yun was very reluctant to let Gong Sunling see a little embarrassment. However, the benefits were also huge. After experiencing the Thunder Tribulation and the Yin Fire Tribulation in the Immortal's cave, his body did not become completely free of impurities. In this regard, the monster race had an innate disadvantage compared to humans. This large cup of 4 C's mysterious coral liquid directly made Ho Yun's body pure a lot, which had immeasurable benefits for his future cultivation. Not to mention anything else, the yellow turban strongman body refining technique alone could save at least decades of hard work. Hurry up, let's find a place to compete. Ho Yin was very curious about Yang Chen's current realm and couldn't wait to compete with Yang Chun, who had the yellow turban strongman body refining arcane power in the river-turning realm. Yang Chun actually wanted to know the gap in strength between himself and Ho Yin. Ho Yin was so eager, Yang Chun was not polite. He directly found an island along the way, put away the shuttle, and the 3 flew to the island and began to prepare for the battle. The island was not big. It was only a few feet, and the sea surface was not high, but it was more than enough for Yang Chun and Ho Yin to stand on. Not far away, Gong Sunling was flying in the air, the only audience at the scene. The two stood face to face. Although he didn't use spiritual power, Ho Yin still held his huge stick. On Yang Chen's side, there were no suitable heavy weapons, so he simply fought empty-handed. Ho Yin was not polite at all. He was not embarrassed at all because Yang Chun was unarmed. Seeing that Yang Chun was ready, he shouted and raised the stick in his hand high, smashing it down on Yang Chun. His stance was clearly that of an irreconcilable enemy with Yang Chun, and he had no concept of holding back at all. Gong Sunling, who was watching from the side, almost screamed. Fortunately, she believed in her Longjuan's ability, and if he couldn't take it, he could use his Wacken, so she didn't lose her composure. The sound of the wind stirred up by the stick was like a soul-chasing beast, sending chills down one's spine. Yang Chun, who was standing in the same place, did not feel the slightest fear. He just stared at the shadow of the stick that was smashed down. Then he stretched out his hand and grabbed the high-speed stick in his hand. The big stick that was smashed down with all his strength was caught by Yang Chun in his hand. Ho Yin was not surprised at all, and some of it was even intentional. If the two wanted to compete in strength, naturally there must be a medium, and this big stick was the medium between the two. However, Yang Chun caught it so easily. Yang Chun held the big stick that carried a huge force in his hand, and his body didn't shake much. This made Ho Yin a little surprised, and even looked forward to it. No one knew the power of the stick better than Ho Yin himself. If it was replaced by an ordinary cultivator, even if they used spiritual power, they might not be able to take it so easily. Over the past year, Ho Yin had fought with many powerful sea beasts, but there was no one who could take his stick with physical strength alone. Even so, Yang Chen's palm still hurt faintly. Ho Yun's stick was definitely more than a force of 100,000 jin. It was at least 40,000 to 50,000 jin. But for Yang Chun at the moment, it was not too difficult. After all, it was beyond 2 realms. It was not simply a matter of strength. Grabbing the head of Ho Yun's stick, Yang Chun immediately backhanded. Ho Yun's body, which was standing in place, was involuntarily driven by Yang Chen at this moment, who, Yang Chen's arm also swung up, but he swung Ho Yun together with the stick. He turned two big circles in the air and then slammed into the ground. Boom! Ho Yun's body had no resistance at all. He was driven by the big stick, turned two circles in the air, and slammed heavily into the ground of the island. Ho Yun, who was covered in dust, jumped out of the human-shaped pit. He didn't even want to stick and jumped directly into the air. Yang Chen did not use his full strength. Ho Yun knew this very well. The same thing was smashed from the air. Yang Chen could easily grab the stick and then unload the force, but Ho Yun couldn't. This was not just a matter of skill. Absolute strength was also a decisive factor. However, just like this, it was completely impossible to see what level Yang Chen's current strength had reached. Ho Yun scratched his ears and cheeks anxiously. It was clear that Yang Chen was in front of him, but he couldn't explore it. This was simply a torturous thing. Yang Chen also wanted to know what level his strength had reached. Although the body refining technique had reached the realm of river-turning strength, it was only a feeling during cultivation. For his true strength, Yang Chen was not clear. At that time, the Dragon Yuan was precious. Yang Chen had no time to verify his strength. Now, it was also an opportunity for Yang Chen to understand himself. He waved Ho Yun's big stick and began to smash around. The goal was no longer directed at Ho Yun, but the island with a radius of a few feet. Boom! The loud sound kept ringing, and after a few consecutive hits, the island had begun to shake violently, and then began to crack from the center. The sudden change made Yang Chen startled. He hurriedly jumped up in the air and looked down at the ordinary island. His heart suddenly moved, and then his figure flashed and went directly into the sea. Ho Yun and Gong Sunling didn't know what Yang Chen was going to do. They couldn't find any trace of Yang Chen with their spiritual awareness. They were waiting quietly in the air. After a few breaths, there was a sudden tumble under the sea. Then, Ho Yun's golden stick flew out of the water and shot straight at Ho Yun like an arrow. Seeing this situation, Ho Yun subconsciously grabbed the stick shadow, but his body was still slightly shaken by the power carried by the big stick. The tumble under the sea became more and more intense. What surprised Ho Yun and Gong Sunling was that even the island below them began to shake violently, as if there was an earthquake under the sea. Suddenly, Ho Yun thought of a possibility, and his eyes widened in an instant. He looked down incredulously, looking forward to the moment when the answer would be revealed. Chapter 847. Yang Chen did not let the two of them wait too long, and soon appeared in front of the two of them. However, he appeared with most of the island. The small island in the sea suddenly stopped shaking, and then suddenly rose up. The speed of the rise was very fast, almost in a breath or two. It became level with the two people in the air. An island suddenly rose from the sea level. Although the island was not very big, it was also very spectacular. In particular, the island was constantly splashing water into the sea, and the island was shaking unstably. The sound and the scene as a whole gave people a very shocking feeling, as if they were witnessing the creation of the world with their own eyes. The island continued to rise, and the part that rose from the sea level was already hundreds of feet high. Then Ho Yun and Gong Sunling saw the figure of Yang Chen. Yang Chen himself was under the island that had already flown up hundreds of feet high. The island had no roots, but it was lifted by Yang Chen below, rising to such a high point. In short, Yang Chen was holding a huge stone hundreds of feet high and several feet wide and jumping into the air. Because he had not used spiritual power, but pure physical power, Yang Chen was still in the process of jumping, but after a while he began to fall. Gong Sunling's mouth did not close. This giant rock was more than 1,000,000 jin, but it was directly lifted by Yang Chen and jumped into the air. How much strength did Yang Chen have now? Ho Yun did not have time to marvel, but his face was dignified. Yang Chen was in the air, but he did not stop moving. He directly threw the hill-like rock at Ho Yun. The pressure of Mount Tai made Ho Yun become very excited in an instant. He had never encountered such a powerful opponent. He stood in the air and put on a serious posture. intending to catch the giant rock thrown by Yang Chun. As soon as his hands came into contact with the boulder, Ho Yun knew he was in trouble. Just this weight alone was not something Ho Yun could withstand with just his physical strength. However, Ho Yun didn't want to give up. He still wanted to know how much strength he had. He stood under the huge rock and gritted his teeth as he forcibly held on. Inevitably, Ho Yun used his spiritual power. Of course, it was only to allow him to float in the air and support the weight of this boulder. However, Ho Yun couldn't support this boulder with just his physical strength. Although his feet were very stable because of his spiritual power, his bones had begun to crack under the pressure. Ho Yun's huge and strong body seemed to have swelled to the limit. His swollen muscles almost tore the entire robe apart. The thick blood vessels under his skin also became protruding under the huge force, like small snakes surrounding Ho Yun's body. The sound of heavy breathing was like a huge bellows, and the whistling wind made people feel worried. The loud heartbeat was like a big drum pounding. Gong Sunling, who was not far away, could even hear the sound of Ho Yun's blood flowing in his blood vessels. But in less than 10 breaths, Ho Yun could no longer hold on. His body seemed to be directly bent by the boulder. Ho Yun just withdrew his spiritual power, and his whole person was directly pressed from the air to the bottom of the sea by the huge rock. The moment the boulder hit the sea, it made a huge splash, and soon the boulder disappeared in the sea. The island that could be seen just now had disappeared without a trace, as if there had never been an island here. Yang Chen's figure soon appeared in front of Gong Sunling. The shuttle was called out, and Gong Sunling was taken in. The shuttle turned into a sailboat and floated quietly on the sea. The two of them sat on the boat and waited quietly for Ho Yun. Ho Yun finally drilled out of the sea, relying on the weight alone. Even if the boulder was 10 times heavier, it was impossible to hurt Ho Yun, who was in the Deshang stage. However, when Ho Yun came out, he was a little embarrassed. Ho Yun was a serious guy. He would rather be pressed down by the boulder than escape from below. Being smashed into the bottom of the sea by the boulder, it was not a good taste in any case. Mountain picking strength, it really lives up to its reputation. Ho Yun knew that Yang Chun was far from exerting all his power, but he had already shown the realm of mountain picking strength. Just now, that small island, if placed on land, wouldn't it be a hill? In addition to sighing, Ho Yun was also looking forward to it, river-turning strength. I don't know how powerful it will be. In fact, even Yang Chun did not know how powerful the river-turning strength could be. But just relying on his physical body, he pulled up an island and threw it into the air, which had already shocked him. To be honest, even an ordinary Jidan stage master may not be able to do this, but Yang Chun has surpassed it by relying on his physical strength alone. Ho Yun was completely convinced by Yang Chun and directly dropped a sentence. I will do whatever you want me to do in the future. Follow you, happy. No wonder Shi Kuei and Xie Sha liked to follow Yang Chun out, and now Ho Yun finally experienced that comfortable feeling. On the way back, the three were not lonely at all. In addition to drinking tea and enjoying Gong Sunling's food, it was exchanging cultivation experiences. Yang Chun, naturally needless to say, although Ho Yun has been stuck in the Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's cave. After all, he was already in the Deshang stage, and some aspects of his understanding were even more thorough than Yang Chen's. The biggest beneficiary was Gong Sunling. The two took turns to point out, so that Gong Sunling almost avoided all the problems that might be encountered in the Jidan stage cultivation. There was a mister, right? There was a transcendental magic weapon, plus the help of hundreds of Yuanying stage masters in the Mountain River geographical map, and there was no suffering in the state of mind. Even if Gong Sunling wanted to become weak, it was impossible. In the absence of Yang Chen's appearance, Gong Sunling could become the first person in the Chunyang Palace in the Jidan stage as long as 10 years. Of course, there was also a premise, that was Gao Yu's dragon horn flying sword had not been refined. Once Gao Yu's dragon horn flying sword was refined, it would also be a magic weapon of the Dragon Clan. Gao Yu's water and fire spirit power double cultivation between Gong Sunling, who was the first Jidan stage master, it was hard to say. However, who would care about this kind of reputation? Moreover, Even if they wanted a rank, they must add their own husband. Although they didn't know how powerful Yang Chen was now. How could he make Ho Yun bow his head to him? Be comparable to the average Jit-on stage master? This trip to the South China Sea had been nearly 4 years, and they didn't know what changes had taken place in the Chunyang Palace. The only thing they knew was that whether it was Yang Chen or the people who came out with Yang Chen this time, they all had great gains. For Chunyang Palace, no matter what, it was a great thing. Chapter 848. With Ho Yun there, Yang Chen and Gong Sunling certainly couldn't cultivate the highest mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra on the shuttle. Yang Chen did not dare to cultivate the 3 purities secret art on this road because of the skyrocketing of his spiritual awareness, for fear that he would soon face the problem of splitting his spiritual awareness. Ho Yun asked Yang Chen about the problem that his spiritual awareness could not be explored. Yang Chen did not tell the truth about this. He just said that he found a magic weapon to hide his spiritual awareness in the sea of no return. When he forcibly suppressed the performance of his spiritual awareness to the Jit-on stage, Ho Yun was able to detect the existence of Yang Chen with his spiritual awareness again. Of course, Yang Chen's explanation for this was that the magic weapon could be controlled at will. Ho Yun did not worry about him and believed it. After all, it was too incredible for Ho Yun to believe that a junior in the Jit-on stage could have the spiritual awareness of a late Deshang stage. Only Gong Sunling knew that perhaps Yang Chen had really broken through the Deshang stage spiritual awareness. A long time ago, when she and Yang Chen's spiritual awareness double cultivation, Gong Sunling knew how powerful Yang Chen's spiritual awareness was. In this regard, Gong Sunling was also looking forward to it. She wanted to know what kind of realm was the spiritual awareness above the Deshang stage. Beyond the Deshang stage, Gong Sunling had only heard of it, but she had never seen it. Perhaps she would soon be able to experience it from Yang Chen. The Central Plains Dao sects seemed to be normal, and nothing major had happened. In the South China Sea, except for the Taishaman who sent a group of masters headed by Sun Chun, there was no follow-up. It was estimated that the other sect did not know what had happened. Back at Chunyang Palace, Yang Chen, of course, first met his master and reported his safety before going to the head of the palace. As soon as they heard that Yang Chen had returned, the elders in the sect immediately gathered in the conference hall in the cave residence. This time, Yang Chen took 10 Yuanying stage masters of the Hall of Eccentrics and even took the avatars of Ho Yun and Gue Shanyu out to kill and set fire, which really made the top management of the sect secretly sweat. For this kind of thing, if one didn't handle it well, they would end up being exterminated by others. Palace Master Zhang Jiao even regretted not stopping Yang Chen at that time. Fortunately, the result of the trip made the top members of the sect surprised, and it was going in the most beneficial direction for Chunyang Palace. When the 10 fellows who had committed murder and arson returned with Gue Shanyu's avatar, the satisfaction on their faces after releasing their killing intent, coupled with some kind of unknown enlightenment, could not be hidden from the upper echelons. After these fellows returned, they immediately resumed their closed-door training, leaving Gue Shanyu alone. It was said that they had been in closed-door cultivation ever since they rushed back from the ship. This situation surprised and delighted everyone, and they didn't know what happened. Fortunately, the old tree demon Gue Shanyu did not need to retreat. He was also a guy who participated in the whole killing and could give everyone a solution. After listening to everything Gue Shanyu said, and then hearing that these 10 guys were under the control of the old tree demon, they felt the Yin fire tribulation in advance, including the head of the palace. Almost all the top members almost jumped up. This kind of once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to interfere with the other party's tribulation at any time and let their own masters feel the Yin fire tribulation experience in advance. How could such a group of murderous and arson guys catch up? How important this kind of experience was, which of the elders present did not know. Who didn't know the benefits? How could all the good things be wrapped up by them? It seemed that if she followed Yang Chen out, it really should be the golden belt of murder and arson. For a moment, the group of elders were a little jealous. Why do these guys have such good luck? The benefits of Yang Chen's trip were not only that. Not to mention the benefits of plundering the Hidden Dragon Cave, The agreement with the South China Sea Alliance for the exchange of special products has made Wanbao Tower a lot of money. It was believed that this could be several times the income of Dao Ba's hard work between the monster race and the Dao sections. After all, no matter how strong Dao Ba was, it was only a small-scale team, and it was still incomparable to a large alliance of tens of thousands of people like the South China Sea Alliance. This time, Wanbao Tower would definitely be able to improve to a higher level. This was not counting the unity of people's hearts brought by Yang Chun directly going out to avenge several shopkeepers of Wanbao Tower. Originally, most of these cultivators who joined Wanbao Tower were hopeless disciples of Chunyang Palace. Although the sect would take care of them, they would not pay much attention to them. Yang Chen's large-scale revenge this time made these disciples of Wanbao Tower feel the owner's protection for them. Only with this intention of the owner, everyone would work together to make Wanbao Tower bigger and stronger. Not to mention that Wanbao Tower had always been very generous. The bigger the business, the greater their income. There were already dozens of disciples who felt hopeless. After joining Wanbao Tower for decades, they made a lot of money and got some applicable heavenly materials and earthly treasures from Wanbao Tower. They broke through the bottleneck of cultivation in one fell swoop and saw the hope of cultivation again. Wanbao Tower had dozens of Jidan stage masters joining at this moment. Counting Knife Scar and the masters hired later, their strength was already comparable to a small sect. The benefits of Wanbao Tower were Yang Chen's, but the benefits of the alliance with the South China Sea Alliance were Chunyang Palace's. One more ally meant one more way. Even if the disciples of Chunyang Palace went to the South China Sea in the future, they would also have an organization to shelter them. The old tree, Demon Gui Shanyu, was not very clear about the detailed situation, and Yang Chun explained it in detail. When Yang Chun explained the causes and consequences of the South China Sea Alliance being plotted against, everyone understood that this time, a secret wing of Taishaman had been cut off unknowingly. Later, Yang Chun did not conceal the things about Sun Chun and the others. He heard that the greatest heaven sect had lost 21 Yuanying stage masters. The happy faces of the palace master and the elders were almost smiling. There was no such thing as a cultivation master who was not happy with things or sad with himself. Even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of them, it would not change its color. They hit the enemy and strengthened themselves. There were countless material benefits. Their 10 Yuanying stage masters gained valuable experience. There was hope for them to cross their tribulation in the future. A hidden master of the Deshang stage could also release his killing intent and improve his cultivation. Everything was so perfect, where was there any dissatisfaction in the sect? Even if there was, the high-level members did not enjoy the baptism of the Yin fire tribulation. However, this kind of opportunity could not be found, and it was not every time they could encounter the enemy's tribulation. For the matter of the Sea of No Return, Yang Chun did not say much, and the head of the palace and others did not delve into it. Where Yang Chun went to gain experience, that was his choice. Everyone only needed to know that Yang Chun had finished his experience and came back safely. They didn't have to worry about other things. However, everyone gathered together because there was one thing to discuss with Yang Chun. This time, the Taishaman came to Chunyang Palace again.